Chapter 721. Didn't you hear what I said? Qin Guang glared angrily. He finally lost his temper after being questioned by the flight attendant woman again and again. At this point, the people on the plane had no other choice but to believe him. Well, Mr. Qin, it seems that we really have no other choice. Qin Guang shrugged. I hope to restore contact with the ground and let them remotely control the plane to land. I'm also afraid of death. If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to take on such a heavy responsibility. The so-called heroes were divided into two types. One was to become a hero for their beliefs and ideals, and the other was like Qin Guang, who was forced to do something beyond his abilities. Miss Sun, aren't you going to follow Mr. Qin? The young musician sitting in front of Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan also noticed that something was wrong. Qin Guang seemed to have become the backbone of all the surviving staff on the plane unknowingly. Although the situation was getting better, it still seemed that danger was lurking everywhere. The flight attendants all looked solemn. At this point, he had forgotten that Qin Guang had looked down on Klaterman just now. He only treated the strongest man in the world as a superman. With such curiosity, he took the initiative to ask Sun Xiaoxuan, who had been sitting calmly in his seat. In his opinion, this girl was not an ordinary person. Although there was no large-scale commotion among the passengers in the first-class cabin at this time, whether it was the successful businessmen, the pot-bellied officials, or the fashionable and handsome celebrities, these people all had lingering expressions of anxiety on their faces. Only this girl that was with Qin Guang stood out from the rest. She looked like a student, but she wasn't afraid at all. Her calmness was simply admirable. Sun Xiaoxuan smiled. Why should I follow him? He's doing business. Aren't you afraid at all? The young musician widened his eyes in disbelief and asked. Sun Xiaoxuan tilted his head and looked at him in confusion. Why should I be afraid? Was there any use in being afraid? It wouldn't change the current situation. If I stuck to him like a dog's skin plaster, it would only bring him trouble and get in his way. Since he said that he would let me go back alive, I believe that he can do it. If it was someone else, they would definitely succumb to the fear in their heart when everyone was in such a desperate situation. They would only want to stay with the people closest to them. Even if they were to die, they wanted to die together. However, Sun Xiaoxuan was different. She knew what was right and what was wrong in this situation. She also knew that the best choice for her was to sit here and wait for Qin Guang to solve all the problems. Unless Qin Guang needed her help, she would stand up and do whatever Qin Guang needed her to do. She didn't realize how special she was, but the young musician in front of her did. No wonder you're friends with Mr. Qin. For some reason, he seemed to have been infected by Sun Xiaoxuan's words and gradually calmed down. Sun Xiaoxuan's mood seemed to have been influenced by him for some reason. Since I'm here, I'll take things as they come. Whether it's life or death, it's all fate. I'll just accept it. At this time, Qin Guang sat back down and chatted with Sun Xiaoxuan for a while before sitting alone in the cockpit. The beggar's version of the world in a cup would take at least an hour and 40 minutes. It was useless to be impatient now. He might as well take advantage of this time to learn more about piloting the plane from the purser. He would at least be able to recognize the functions of some buttons. As for the cruising route, he had already figured it out. When he learned how to pilot a plane, he might try to destroy the computer center and switch to manual mode. The problem of the automatic cruising route would naturally be solved. After all, this was a huge plane with a high level of modern technology. He didn't know how difficult it would be to pilot it in manual mode. After all, he was only one person. It was a bit difficult to think about it. Forget it. Don't worry about those details. I have to believe in the professionals of the world in a cup. When I master it, I will be the strongest in the world. My electric car will also be able to run like a Harley Davidson. A civil airliner will be a piece of cake. The other flight attendants began to walk around the cabin again. Compared with before, these flight attendants were much calmer and no longer panicked. They hoped to find a hacker among the passengers and try to crack the plane's built-in security system to change the cruising route. But they couldn't directly tell the seriousness of the situation. Even Qin Guang asked if there was a parachute on the plane. There must be many other passengers on the plane who had the same idea. In the claustrophobic cabin, facing a situation where they might not survive, the dark side of human nature was likely to be magnified infinitely in an instant. Maybe it only needed a small opportunity. Before, everyone thought they were going to die, so they might have been relatively casual when dealing with these things. But once there was a chance to survive, the flight attendants immediately became serious and professional. So they told a small lie when asking the passengers. They lied that Qin Guang had a very skilled pilot experience. With him in charge, the crisis had basically been completely resolved. Now they only needed a computer service staff to assist in the operation. The reason why Qin Guang didn't sit next to Sun Xiaoxuan in the first-class cabin but sat alone in the cockpit was to cooperate with the flight attendants' white lie. But unfortunately, until they finished asking the last passenger in the economy class, they still couldn't find an expert who could crack the route. The plane still flew straight to Ioha. "Mr. Qin, I'm sorry. There's really no one who can help." The chief flight attendant reported the news to Qin Guang in frustration. Qin Guang sighed and turned his head to look at the dense buttons and digital screens on the console. Well, what he had just learned was basically in vain. "I'm afraid I can only use manual mode? I'm afraid it's very difficult. According to our previous experience, manual mode is usually only used in very extreme situations. After all, at least 2 or 3 pilots are required to complete it. There are too many aspects to control on the plane." The chief flight attendant's tone became more and more dejected. The hope of survival that had gradually been ignited was gradually extinguished. She initially thought that Qin Guang had some foundation in flying. After all, his words of "don't doubt my ability" sounded domineering and powerful. In the end, that fellow nearly mistook the button to open the cabin door for ejection, which caused the chief flight attendant's mental breakdown. Does your civil aviation have ejection start? Well, maybe he really is a genius. After all, the director of the CIA also knows how to fly a plane. It's not impossible that the director of the Special Affairs Bureau of China is a monster. They are at the same level. But now he still needs to pilot it manually. Isn't that too much? Also, why did he insist on waiting for 2 hours? What's the principle behind it? I only know a very superficial thing. Can he learn to fly by lying in the pilot's chair and meditating like this? Isn't that ridiculous? At this moment, there was a sudden rustling sound from the communicator. After losing contact with the ground command for nearly half an hour, the passenger plane that had disappeared into thin air finally regained some contact with the human world. Not only were the people on the plane working hard, but the aviation command center on the ground was also trying everything possible to restore contact. They may have activated some kind of safety protection mechanism remotely, and they finally succeeded. "Calling DL199333, calling DL199333, this is China Airlines Command Center." The chief flight attendant immediately picked up the communication, and Qin Guang also became alert. However, about 10 minutes later, everyone sighed. The situation did not seem to have improved much. It was nothing more than having one more person to chat with. Although the co-pilot did not completely destroy the communication system, he had completely cut off the remote control port. Even the backup port was not spared. At present, the only thing that could be connected was the emergency communicator, but it was useless. They could not change the course or take over the plane. "Everyone, don't give up hope. We will do everything we can to save the lives of DL199333 and all the passengers on the plane. We also have the most professional pilots on standby. As long as you can completely follow our instructions during the landing, your chances of survival are very high." The voice of the middle-aged man on the communicator said some very meaningless words. Qin Guang curled his lips, thinking that it would be more useful to tell a joke to make me happy. The chief flight attendant also played along. "Thank you. If you can come up with any ideas, we will do our best to cooperate. Okay, now the fuel on the plane can last for about 10 hours. You will arrive at the preset destination in about 7 hours, leaving us with plenty of time." The ground command center on the communicator got some good news from the plane. After all, Qin Guang was less than an hour and a half away from the next beggar's world in the cup. In the following period of time, the two sides maintained communication. As the new pilot who volunteered, Qin Guang was taught some basic flight knowledge through the communicator. The chief flight attendant cooperated with him the whole time. Although everyone felt that this was actually a meaningless struggle, who would want to give up until the last moment? "Anyway, I don't care what you do. Qin Guang must not die." At this time, in a large courtyard in Yanjing, several old men were glaring at the person in charge of Wuxia Airlines and roaring. This earth-shattering event finally reached the ears of this group of old men. At that time they were so scared that they jumped out of their chairs. They temporarily interrupted the large-scale meeting and focused on investigating this matter. The one who made this roar was Old Man Jiang. His fists were clenched tightly, and the veins on his forehead were popping. The other old men's faces were also extremely ugly. No one even dared to look at Old Man Jin's face. Chapter 722. Everyone knew that Grandfather Jin's granddaughter was tied to Qin Guang. Although Jin Shiyue had a gentle personality, she was famous for being soft on the outside but tough on the inside. If Chen Guang died, the consequences would be unthinkable. Of course, what everyone was most concerned about was the Wen family's leader's opinion on this matter. All along, the two sides rarely communicated directly. Many things were maintained through Chen Guang as a link. The person who made Wen family's leader willing to side with the ruler was Chen Guang, the director of the Special Affairs Bureau. Otherwise, with the strength she displayed that day, even the new weapons might not be a threat to her. Without enough restraint and reason, why would she be willing to give up her privileges and let others control her? On their plane, is there really not a single pilot with experience? He had scolded them, but it was useless. The old man in the middle slowed down his tone and asked the person in charge of China Airlines again. The China Airlines representative on the screen confirmed with the staff next to him and helplessly replied, "Indeed, there is not a single pilot. Now Director Chin is undergoing emergency training. We can only hope that he can learn and apply what he has learned." How is that possible? Nonsense. Even if he is a civil aviation pilot without a long period of systematic training, it is impossible to complete a flight mission. What's more, the automatic control system on DL199333 is damaged. There is no ground crew to provide positioning and technical support. This is too difficult. Old man Jean slammed the table and stomped his feet. The China Airlines representative nodded. This is not the worst situation. In fact, the plane's preset flight route is directly to a place called Ioha. That should be the terrorist organization's base. If we want to change the course, we can only switch the plane to manual operation mode. Only a half-baked pilot, who was learning and applying what he had learned, and it had to be manual operation. The old men were silent for a moment. No matter how they thought about it, it was a scam. No one wanted to admit it, but in their hearts they were all thinking the same thing. This time it was really over. First, help us connect the communication. We want to talk to Chen Guang. The atmosphere in the conference room was extremely tense. The old man in the middle said so. On the other side, Chen Guang was almost dizzy from the cramming method of the flight instructor in the command center. There were so many instruments and the other party could not wait to explain 3 or 4 per second. It would be a miracle if he could remember them all. When he heard that the elders wanted to talk to him, he quickly nodded and asked them to switch. "Brother, although you have good intentions, you speak too fast. There are too many things that I need to remember and I don't have the ability to do that right now." The moment the communication was connected, old Zhang's voice came. "Little Chin, stay strong." "Okay, thank you. I've always been strong. Believe me, you can do it." This was old Jin's encouragement. Sure, no problem." Chen Guang acknowledged. After exchanging a few words, Chen Guang was almost convinced by the old men. He was calm, but the old men's tone was sorrowful. "How are you guys consoling me? You're clearly sending me on my way. Aren't you trying to comfort me? You're clearly sending me on my way. Well, actually, things might not be that bad. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine." Chen Guang said tentatively. The old men were moved to tears. This young man was too strong, too great, too brave. In this world, he was probably the only one who could still be so calm in such a desperate situation. Chen Guang. Good job, young man. A real man should live as a hero and die as a hero. No matter what, we will take care of your family. Chen Guang, although it's good to be strong now that things have come to this, we have to prepare for the worst. Tell us if you have any unresolved thoughts in your heart. Don't worry, we're not asking you to say your last words. Well, it's better to be safe than sorry. The old man in the middle rarely made promises, but now that things had come to this, he felt that he needed to make more promises to Chen Guang. Old man Jean also said, "Chen Guang, I've always treated you as my grandson-in-law. No matter what, from now on your family is also my family. I won't guarantee them a lifetime of glory and wealth, but peace and happiness will definitely not be a problem. Hey, old gentleman, which eye of yours saw that I've already ascended to heaven? You keep saying that it's not my last words, but why do I feel like something is wrong? Right, we've contacted sect leader Wen. Do you have anything else to say to her?" At this moment, one of the old men in charge of communicating with the Special Affairs Bureau suddenly interrupted. The old men's intentions were clear to have Chen Guang talk to Wen at this time. They hoped that Chen Guang could at least stabilize sect leader Wen in the final moments of his life. The big picture was the most important. Although this was a very mundane way of thinking, this matter was of utmost importance. Alright, help me get through to her. But things really aren't that bad, old man. Although his heart was aching, he actually wanted to know what Wen would say to him in this situation. She would probably be scared half to death? Alright, this was actually quite interesting. Chen Guang knew what the old men were thinking, but he wasn't bothered by it. He immediately agreed to it and even comforted the old men in the process. Strong young man, you don't have to comfort us. We should be the ones comforting you. Then we'll first contact the 2 deputy directors of the Special Affairs Bureau of the 5 capitals. They'll be in charge of contacting sect leader 1. Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan's soft sobbing could be heard from the communicator. Alright, those 2 girls also know about this. Brothers, in another hour or so, the new and hottest strongest pilot will be born. Don't make it seem like we're going to be separated forever. As the old men spoke, Xan Qin's scream suddenly came from the other end. Bastard director. How could you do this? How could you leave me and little Miao Miao alone without saying a word? I haven't even learned the painting scroll, and I don't even understand what's going on with your bone structure. You bastard. You irresponsible bastard. Well, he did not hear Wenwen's voice, but was scolded by Xan Qin first. Hey, calm down. Calm down. I'm not dead yet, right? I'm still flying in the sky, aren't I? Don't quibble, don't comfort us, I know all about it. You're dead. Wu Miaowan's voice came from the side again. To be honest, those who know will think that you're comforting me, but those who don't know will think that you're cursing me. The old men in Yanjing listened and did not know whether to laugh or cry at Wu Miaowan's words. Were they really on the same side? Qin Guang did not even bother to roll his eyes. What kind of stinky mouth did these 2 girls have? Don't worry, although the situation looks terrible now, the plane is cruising on autopilot, and it didn't explode. It's just a small matter, a small matter. It's just piloting a plane, what's the big deal? As soon as he finished speaking, the plane suddenly shook, and the alarm suddenly sounded in the cockpit. Qin Guang and the flight attendants swayed violently, and they almost fell to the ground. *CK, is my mouth blessed or something? 10 seconds later, listening to the buzzing alarm in his ears, Master Guang looked at the shocking pile of red exclamation marks on the surveillance equipment that he could not understand, and felt a little uncomfortable. At this moment, the China Airlines person in charge's voice interrupted again. That the plane must have encountered an extreme cold wave just now, and the right wing engine must have suffered a certain impact. And then? Qin Guang, the old men, and Xan Qin asked in unison. The China Airlines person in charge swallowed his saliva. The power has been damaged, and the autopilot has automatically increased its power to maintain speed and balance. The fuel consumption has increased, and with the plane's current fuel capacity, it can only hold on for another 3 to 4 hours before reaching Ioha. Of course, this is still a better situation. The right-wing engine also has the possibility of overloading and stopping at any time. The power parameters of the Canadian-made engine are. Wait, what you said is too professional, I don't quite understand. Make it simple, make it simple. To put it simply, the plane can lose an engine at any time and then lose balance, stalling, and crash. It can also crash after 3 hours of fuel exhaustion. The China Airlines person in charge said dejectedly. Then what should we do now? Immediately switch to manual mode, and then make an emergency landing. Qin Guang spread his hands. Save it. With my current standard, do you think I can make an emergency landing? Even if you give me the widest and largest runway, I can still crash into the ground. Do you believe me? No matter what, wait for me for an hour and a half. Also, it's the sea below us. Make an emergency landing? Does this plane have a gliding function? At this moment, everyone fell into silence. What Qin Guang said was correct, and the situation had truly worsened. At this moment, there was a commotion in the passenger cabin. Finally, someone could not sit still and ran over to see the situation. Qin Guang had no choice but to stand up with a straight face. Get out, get out. Just sit there obediently. Don't cause trouble. Sir, what was that vibration just now? I accidentally stepped on the brakes just now to test the performance. Huh? Brakes? Brake. Alright. Get out, get out. As Qin Guang spoke, he slammed the cockpit door shut. He was also upset. When it rains, it pours. When one is unlucky, they can't even drink water. The flight attendants in the cockpit cried again. All of you get out too. All of you get out. I'm so annoyed. Qin Guang chased all the flight attendants out, leaving only the chief flight attendant who had not cried yet to help out. After a long time, old Master Jin's voice came again. This time it was even sadder than before. The old master, who was used to all kinds of storms, actually had a sobbing tone. Little Qin, you have to be strong. In everyone's hearts, Qin Guang and the rest of the plane had officially entered a 3-hour death countdown. The atmosphere became more and more depressing and heavy. Everyone could not help but try to figure out what Qin Guang and the rest were feeling at this moment. How desperate and sad were they? Chapter 723. At this moment, Xan Qin suddenly shouted again without any rhyme or reason. Chief, hurry up and rub it. Qin Guang thought he had misheard. The old men did not react in time. After all, rub was a term used on the internet. The old men did not understand it very well. What did you just say? Qin Guang asked again. Xan Qin took a deep breath and shouted at the top of her lungs, come. Rub. Are you crazy? Look at the situation now. Stop messing around. Qin Guang roared back with an even louder voice than her. Considering the identities of the participants, this might be the highest level conference in the country. With such a solemn occasion and tense atmosphere, can't you see that the elders are on the verge of tears? Can't you be more serious? I'm serious. Hurry up and put it in a bottle. It's best to throw it into the sea in a low-temperature insulated box. I'll set off now. I'll definitely find your bottle in the sea. Then I'll give you a child. Mother ****. I want it too. Wu Miaowan said again. The old men are all listening. I have a clean relationship with you all. Don't make it sound like we're in a relationship. Don't cause trouble. When Qin Guang thought about how even old man Jin was listening to them, he was nearly driven insane by these two lolas. So awkward. No. Listen to me. I'm not talking nonsense. Chief, don't you realize how terrifying your talent is? Do you know how precious and rare a talent like yours is under the circumstances that you don't have to consider your comprehension ability? I watched the live broadcast of your match in Detroit. Don't you know how precious your arms are? That's right. Our chief is simply a weirdo in the history of human evolution. Every gene is a treasure. It's a disaster for mankind to burn them to ashes in the air crash. Wu Miaowan chimed in. Then she seemed to be talking to herself. I'm also a genius. If I can combine the chief's genes, how talented will the child be? Chief, don't give up on yourself. Hurry up and do it. For all of mankind. Qin Guang silently covered his face as he listened to the two kids, talking nonsense. He did not even have the strength to complain. Unexpectedly, after the initial awkwardness and bewilderment, the elders finally understood the meaning of the two little lolas, and actually agreed with them. Qin Guang's victory in Detroit naturally attracted the attention of not only America's Special Department, but China also had their own thoughts. It's just that due to various reasons and Sect Master Wen's mood, it wasn't convenient for them to bring it up. Then again, Qin Guang was someone on their side to begin with, so there's no rush in this matter. When the time comes, it's not impossible for him to mention it. But now, his plane crash was imminent, and he only had a little more than 3 hours to live. In that case, the problem that the two little girls, who were martial arts practitioners, considered was indeed not to be taken lightly, even though the landing point was very strange. These two deputy chiefs of the Guang were talents. The younger generation will surpass the older. Little Qin, little Xin, and the others are right. There are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. If it's really possible, try it. This may be too much for the two little girls, but we will think of another way for you. Old Master Jean, you're also doing this. I will ask Shirua. If she agrees, are you crazy? Shut up. I don't want to talk to you. Please help me get one. Can't I? Xan Qin and the old men said in the same regretful tone. Nonsense. Old Master, you were also led into the ditch by them, right? Can you be more serious? Can you let me say my last words properly? Okay. After a few seconds of silence, when Wen's voice finally came, Qin Guang, if you die, I will kill all the people who directly or indirectly caused your death. I will help you keep an eye on your uncle and aunt. Okay, thank you. Also, hurry up and do it. It was obvious that Wen had been listening for a long time. Her first sentence was concise and comprehensive, going straight to the point. Are you crazy? If it wasn't for the fact that this was an emergency call, Qin Guang would have hung up on the phone. This is life and death, can you please be more serious? Okay, I'll be serious. Please listen to me. I want to give birth to a child for you. You know me, no one else will be interested in me. I can't just live like this for the rest of my life. If you die, then forget it. Please leave something behind so that I can think of something. I won't die. I really won't die. I really have a way. But I really don't know how to explain it to you. Forget it. Anyway, I'm a righteous person. That's it. I'm hanging up. After a long time, Qin Guang turned to look at the purser and said in English, how do we cut this thing off? Can we still connect it if we cut it off? Mr. Qin, please don't. This is our only way to communicate with the outside world. The purser quickly tried to dissuade him. All right, then let's continue like this. Now I have to close my eyes and meditate. None of you believe me, but you can't go wrong by listening to me. I'll show you later that I'll become an ace pilot." After saying that, Qin Guang picked up his sleeves and ran to the side to find a small bed to lie down on. If he continued to sit in front of the communicator, he would either be force-fed, or he would be asked for essence. That was just too crazy. At this critical moment, he wasn't afraid of being rude in front of the elders. Anyway, in their hearts he was already a dead man. What's wrong with me being a little arrogant? In the end, Qin Guang was forced to lie down and act shamelessly. The other side only allowed him and the purser to listen in on a high-level meeting. The general meaning was that Wenwen and the elders had promised to uphold peace and hoped that martial artists and ordinary people could live in harmony. This was what Qin Guang had always wanted. Even if something happened to Qin Guang, she was willing to maintain the current situation and work together to change things in a better direction. However, she wasn't completely unconditional. In general, she wanted Qin Guang's funeral to be of the highest standard. She also wanted Qin Guang's family to do whatever they wanted. Hearing this group of people discussing his funeral so happily, Master Guang gritted his teeth as he lay on the bed. However, he didn't really lie down for long before someone shouted at him to get off the bed. The command center quickly took over the call, and the intense last-minute force-feeding began again. At this moment, Qin Guang didn't want to listen to them for even a second. However, he had no choice. Everyone was depending on him, and he had no choice but to put on an act. Thus, he could only mutter to his communicator to express that he was listening. After waiting for about half an hour, Wenwen and the others' meeting finally ended. Although Wenwen felt terrible, she wasn't a sloppy person. She ended the call after finalizing the matter. Perhaps she was already busy avenging Qin Guang. "I say bro, take a break. Really, take a break. I feel like your throat is on fire when I listen to your voice over the phone. I really can't remember such complicated things in a short time. Listen to me. You must remember the key points. Once we get close to land, try to switch to manual mode and then try to change direction. We can roughly capture your position and movement route now. Thanks to the Big Dipper system, I'll try my best to cooperate with you and guide you to the nearest airport. When the time comes, you'll circle in the air. We'll think of a way to slowly bring the plane down. Okay. Reduce the power when you land. Don't rush it. Pull the nose up. Chief Qin? Where are you, Chief Qin? Sorry, I fell asleep. Chief Qin, be serious." At this moment, a crisp voice suddenly came from the communicator. Qin Guang, are you okay? How are you? Well, this was Jin Shirue. How did she know? I'm fine. My emotions are very stable. I'm trying to save myself. Qin Guang listened to her sobbing tone and felt his heart ache. He was really ashamed. The situation was not as bad as you think. As long as the engine didn't blow up. No, for an ace pilot, even if one engine blew up, they would still be able to glide and land. I know. I won't waste your time. I just want to tell you that I love you. You must survive. Jin Shirue only said one sentence. After all, she was a girl who knew the big picture. At such a special time, she was already completely satisfied that she could use her status and privilege to fight for the opportunity to say such a sentence. Thank you. I know. I won't die. Regarding the matter of Jin Shirue taking the initiative to pursue him, Qin Guang was actually deliberately avoiding it. After all, it wasn't easy to get rid of such a big scandal target. It was quite hard for him to live with the identity of Jin Shirue's boyfriend. But now he would respond to her a little. Anyway, in everyone's heart, his current situation was too miserable and terrible. Unexpectedly, just as Jin Shirue's voice disappeared, Jiang Yage continued. Qin Guang, you know what I'm thinking. I'm warning you, you can't die. Otherwise, I'll tell everyone in the world about it. You have to live well for me. The matter she was talking about should be referring to the time when she saw Qin Guang dressed as Qin Yu in Yanjing's Inua Club. Qin Guang pressed his forehead and said weakly, all right. I already said I won't die. Sister Shirue and I will wait for you to come back together. As long as you can come back alive, you can do whatever you want. You understand? After Jiang Yage finished speaking, she fell silent. In the eyes of others, Qin Guang must be racing against time. The old men looked at each other, especially Old Master Jin and Old Master Jiang. They felt that something was wrong. Could it be that Yage also likes him? Old Master Jin said doubtfully. Old Master Jiang smacked his lips. Seems so. I watched her grow up, but I've never seen her speak to anyone in such a tone. Old Master Jin didn't point out one thing. After all, when Jiang Yage said, you can do whatever you want in front of everyone, the ambiguity was too deep. As old people, it was a little difficult for them to get used to it. Well, little Qin, as long as you can come back safely, we won't interfere in the affairs of you young people. Qin Guang, who was dealing with the command center, glared at him. Old man, you guys are really working hard to stimulate my potential. Well, Jiang Yage and I, it's okay, we don't blame you. Old Master Jiang interrupted him. Okay, let's not talk about it anymore. Hurry up and do the assault training. It's up to you. Qin Guang had no choice but to say, okay. Finally, after more than an hour of dawdling, when his brain was about to explode from the extremely enthusiastic instructors in the command center, he finally picked up his cup. It doesn't seem to be filled with water. Forget it, I'm learning to fly a plane anyway, it's better to leave it empty. I just don't know what the beggar version of pilot training will be like. Forget it, I'll deal with whatever comes my way anyway. Now that things have come to this, there's nothing to ask for. He focused his mind and sank into it. Liuli was still sitting without any movement, but Qin Guang already had the experience of mobilizing the realm of life on his own. The move looked a little shameful and out of place, but it should be quite useful. He clenched his fists, curled up his body tightly, and then suddenly raised his arms and shouted, "Come on! Holy Grail! I want to learn to fly a plane." His roar echoed repeatedly in Cloud City, sounding soul-stirring and awe-inspiring. After waiting for several minutes, there was no movement. Maybe the posture was wrong, or maybe the momentum was not enough, so he did it again. Puff. Liuli, who was meditating with her eyes closed, was finally amused by his simple and honest look. If you want to tell me that you are acting cute, then let me tell you, you have succeeded. Hey, don't make fun of me. I'm very anxious now. Since you are awake, help me. Liuli blinked and didn't talk nonsense. She raised her hand and Qin Guang's body floated up again. Qin Guang, who slowly disappeared in Cloud City, didn't notice that after he left, Liuli's figure suddenly became a little fainter. Sister Liuli, you worked too hard. Lu Mingwa said with a heartache. Liuli smiled. I can't help it. Who asked me to meet him? Maybe after he withstood this for a while, I really need to have a good rest. Let's wait a little longer. When the Holy Grail is upgraded to another level and reaches the 3rd level, Cloud Elephant Sky, our situation will be much better. Lu Mingwa sighed. On Qin Guang's side, he thought that he would be trapped in the armor like many times before, or he would be like the racing god training ground with only half an alto. However, after transforming in the world in the cup, he immediately found that this was not the case. As far as the eye could see, it was an endless starry sky, and the music he was familiar with rang in his ears. If he remembered correctly, it was probably the FC game he played when he was a primary school student more than 10 years ago. Little B? The more he looked at the starry sky, the more he felt that this was not a real starry sky but an 8-bit FC game. He wanted to look at his hand. Well, my hand has become a pillar. Now I am sitting in a mosaic small plane in Little B, right? No wonder it was the beggar version. This low-quality, low-sound, low-standard flying shooting game was really simple. At least give me Saruman Snake or Thunderbolt. Chapter 724. In the past, Qin Guang felt that half an alto was already the pinnacle of a small sparrow in a cup, but it had all the essentials. After all, although the interior of the unlucky alto was covered in mosaics, the soundtrack was retarded, and the road outside was even worse, the feel and control of the entire car was no different from a real car. This was not something that could be easily achieved. But today he found that he still underestimated the width of the world in the cup. It was really scary, the mosaic of himself, the mosaic of the Little B plane. The instrument in front of him was completely the lowest end of the 8-bit game, but looking at it, the instrument was so complete. The feeling of flying was so real. No, these instruments seemed to be completely different from the civil aviation plane just now, and the cockpit was also very narrow. Could it be that this was a terrifying fighter plane? Just as he was thinking, the super simple electronic sound from the world in the cup finally came. First lesson of beginner flight tutorial. Qin Guang quickly raised his spirits and concentrated. He thought that this first lesson should let him familiarize himself with the performance of the fighter plane. More importantly, he should recognize the meaning of these instruments and how to use them, right? Please, Redeemer, eliminate the 50 green bees in front of you in 10 minutes. What the F***, CK? The first lesson of your beginner flight tutorial is 1 against 50. Are you crazy? Can you tell me how to fly the plane first? As he was cursing in his heart, the green dots floating in the distant starry sky suddenly moved, making a buzzing sound and rushed in the direction of Qin Guang. Even though he was now a mosaic of a person sitting in the plane, the sound made by the 50 little bees in front of him was deafening. Seeing these damn things flying closer and closer, the new pilot, Qingguang, was still in a daze. The result was, of course, no suspense. The green bees hit his mosaic plane and exploded with a bang. He said he was going to die without any hesitation. But perhaps because his whole body was turned into a mosaic, he almost didn't feel any pain when he was killed. It was really no different from playing a game. In addition, he also learned something that he didn't know, whether it was good or bad news. This time, the world in the cup actually had no resurrection limit. He could die as many times as he wanted to. Just thinking about it made him feel blessed. There was no risk of failing the mission at all. But after his resurrection, he quickly shed 2 lines of sad mosaic tears. This was a basket of good news. Didn't this mean that he would die very, very miserably? Beginner Tutorial Lesson 1, second time. It even counted. Finally, after being hit 17 or 18 times in a row, Qingguang managed to get Mosaic's plane to move a little before it was hit. But it was of no use. The evil green bee turned around and accurately crashed into him. Beginner's Tutorial, Lesson 1, Time 9837. Driving the mosaic plane nimbly through the green bees, he pressed the shooting button from time to time, letting the bayu on the tip of the red tip of the mosaic plane emit an electronic light, accurately hitting the last green bee. He finally completed the first lesson of the Honey Juice Beginner Tutorial. Is it finally the second lesson? Elementary Flight Tutorial, Lesson 1, Section 2. Did the jungler have to be so meticulous? There was still a second lesson in the first lesson. Please, Redeemer, eliminate the 55 green bees in front of you in 9 minutes. Next, 60 small bees were eliminated in 8 minutes. Until the final 120 small bees were eliminated in 1 minute, he finally completed the rather painful first lesson of the beginner tutorial. Please eliminate 120 green bees and 10 purple bees in 1 minute. You are so boring. What was normal pilot training like? Qingguang had no idea. He also felt that what he was practicing now was definitely a super unreasonable wild way, but life was like this. Since he couldn't resist, he closed his eyes and enjoyed it. Although he seemed to be in the starry sky at this time, the feeling of flying the mosaic plane was really no different from piloting a fighter plane in the Earth's atmosphere. He didn't know what model the mosaic plane he was piloting at this time was, but there was no doubt that it was a very low-end thing. After all, the electronic equipment of this plane was too retarded. Whether it was pulling up or changing directions or even any small movements, it all required him to manually operate. Fortunately, the rich piloting experience from the Racing God training ground, coupled with the Kirin arms and Aeolus legs, gave him super flexible and super useful limbs. It was very difficult to fly and shoot alone in the plane at the same time, but he slowly got used to it. The amazing thing was that although his hand looked like a fire stick, he could still feel the feeling of his 5 fingers touching the instrument when he was operating the instrument. The level of the small bees was getting higher and higher, from green to purple to red, and then gradually turned into the queen bee. The flying of the enemy bees was getting more and more flexible, and the attack method also changed from a simple collision to a crossfire line, or a high-speed collision, or the even more terrifying formation attack. He really didn't know how long it had been, at least a few years, but the beginner tutorial was finally over. The little mosaic figure in Mosaic's cockpit was so touched that it shed a mosaic tear. Advanced Flight Tutorial Lesson 1. Damn it, are you done? What the hell is an advanced version? Is it even beginner? Well, compared to the last time, it seemed that the instruments in the cockpit were not the same. The number and type of instruments had increased, but the control had become a little easier. It seemed that with the upgrade of the beginner tutorial, the plane had also been upgraded from a suspected World War I model to a World War II model. After the performance improvement of the plane, the biggest change brought to Qingguang was the load on the body during high-speed movements. Flying a plane was driving, and driving a car was also driving. On the surface it looked like driving a vehicle, but in fact, there was an essential difference between the two. A car would hardly disintegrate during a big maneuver, but it was different for a plane, especially a fighter plane. In the process of an intense firefight, it often had to make a variety of high-power and high-load maneuvers, such as sudden changes in direction, immense somersaults, vertical turns, Dutch rolls, and other difficult movements. If the intensity of these movements exceeded the endurance of the plane itself, it was even possible for the plane to disintegrate while flying. In addition, when a high-speed fighter plane engaged in an intense fight in the air, every big maneuver would cause an extremely terrifying load on the body of the fighter plane pilot. For example, black vision. When the fighter plane rapidly increased its G value, gravity would pull the human body's blood down, and the human body would continue to rush up along with the plane. This would cause the brain to be short of blood, and the vision would turn black and nothing could be seen. This was actually a sign of fainting. Conversely, there would also be a situation where a large amount of blood would flow into the pilot's head, and the pilot's eyeballs might even be squeezed out of their eye sockets, or cause intracranial hemorrhage. Every step of piloting a fighter plane was dangerous. First of all, a top-notch pilot must have a very good physical fitness, which could also be understood as acceleration endurance. Second, the pilot must have an accurate judgment of the limits of the plane and the pilot's own endurance. In a dogfight, the one who could maximize the performance of their own fighter plane, whose tactical strategy was the most correct, whose judgment was the most accurate, and who could survive to the end. True ace pilots, in addition to diligently studying and training, were all talented people. Because of their innate advantages, they could always touch the limits of the fighter plane in their own body. In an intense firefight where life and death was only a hair's breadth away, they could always laugh to the end. For example, Richard Bond had piloted the same type of fighter plane as others, but he participated in hundreds of aerial battles in World War II and survived, and in the end he shot down 27 enemy planes. Another ace pilot, the father of Soviet aerial combat, Pokrishkin, had shot down as many as 59 planes. Such a great disparity in results was precisely because of the unique talents of these ace pilots. They had a strong physique and an incomparably calm mentality. They could always use the shortest time to come up with the most correct strategy. Compared to ordinary pilots, their advantages were almost overwhelming. However, after going through the first stage of basic training, Qin already had all of these elements. Although the special training for his entire body had not been completed, his physique had long since surpassed the scope of ordinary people. As for his psychological quality and judgment, after dying countless times, even the weakest person should have trained it, not to mention that his psychological quality was not bad to begin with. In fact, it was super strong. The more one died, the less one was afraid. Something like judgment, to put it bluntly, was more of an accumulation of experience. The difference was that other pilots wanted to accumulate experience and had to fight with their lives. If they died, they could only wait for their next life to be reincarnated, but Master Guang said, "I have unlimited life." Although his opponent was Little B and did not look very serious, the graphics were also very crazy, and the accompaniment of the FC minigame was also very out of tune, but the greatest characteristic of the Heavenly Holy Grail was that no matter how much other aspects were reduced, the content related to special training would never be reduced. The control of this fighter plane was completely realistic. In the intense flight movements, the test of the performance of the fighter plane and the human body was also completely realistic. Even the feeling of the plane disintegrating due to excessive movements was completely realistic. As he flew, he felt like he was flying outside, his knees facing the breeze. It was simply refreshing. After switching to the World War II model, although the control had become simpler, the burden on the body was greater. However, as time passed, it seemed that his body's adaptability had gradually increased, and his acceleration endurance slowly increased through continuous flight. Finally, he waited for the new electronic notification from the Heavenly Holy Grail. Advanced version of basic flight tutorial, first lesson. Alright, you win. After the advanced version came the advanced version. When would there be an intermediate version? Would there be an advanced version? Wait, the cockpit seemed to have become bigger? He looked carefully at the instrument, and then tried to switch to manual mode to move the plane. Alright, this time even the model had been changed to become a bomber. There was actually no buy-a gun. Only airdrop bombs could be used to blow up little bees? Are you toxic? Isn't this game too difficult? Alright, I actually completed it again? I'm such a genius. Advanced version of basic flight tutorial, first lesson. You're already in the advanced version and you're still in the basic version. Are you crazy? Airbus A330-200? Switch to a modern model and it's a passenger plane. Isn't this the one outside now? What a considerate world in the cup. You want me to pilot a passenger plane to deal with those little bees in front of me? No weapons. I can only use the two wing blades that inexplicably grew out of the edges of the wings to cut them? You want me to pilot the plane as a Guan Yu? I actually did it. I'm such a genius. Qin Guang sat silently in the cockpit. Piloting such a large passenger plane in manual mode alone was simply insane. Even the supposedly tireless world in the cup made him unbearably tired. After successfully completing the advanced version, he didn't have the mood to be happy. Who knew what version of the basic version would be next? As for how long he had been piloting, he couldn't be bothered to calculate. At least a few hundred years in this world in the cup, time was not even considered as time. Fortunately, his mind was protected by the power of the Holy Grail, or else only God knows how many times he would have gone crazy. When is this unlucky basic version ending? While he was complaining in his mind, his body suddenly trembled, the entire FC Little B starry sky quickly disintegrated, the A330 mosaic cockpit beside him also slowly turned into specks of stars and dissipated into the void. Is it finally going to end? Chen Guang looked at the endless void and thought so in his mind. Congratulations, Redeemer, you have completed the entire flying tutorial. After all this time, the basic version was all special flying training. Holy Grail, you liar. Next, please accept your graduation exam, Real Aerial Combat. As the voice faded, Chen Guang's vision blurred, he appeared in a completely black and white world. There was a buzzing sound in his ears, it was the roar of the engine, the glass cockpit soundproofing was really not good, even if his head was wrapped in a pilot's helmet, it still made a buzzing sound. Raising his head, Chen Guang looked around and gave full marks for the picture quality of the graduation exam. Although it was black and white, everything before him looked extremely realistic. It's just that there was a hazy feeling to it. Looking at the instrument, he should be piloting a very outdated small model. What kind of model is this? Where am I going now? What am I doing now? In this black and white world. Just as he was thinking about this, a large pile of information was suddenly shoved into his brain. It actually included all the aircraft models that had appeared in modern society from the day of the birth of the aircraft. From the functional parameters to the meaning of the control instruments, to the weapon loading, everything was there. The huge amount of knowledge was strangely forced into his brain by the Holy Grail. There was no difficulty in the technical aspect. All he had to do was memorize it. The Holy Grail was also lazy, it just made his brain swell and hurt badly. After a few minutes, he slowly came back to his senses, and once again dug his brain to search for memories. These memories that originally did not belong to him, it was not very convenient to mobilize them. He could not achieve what he thought, he had no choice but to search bit by bit. After a long time, he finally confirmed his model, the Soviet-made Polikarpov IL-15 fighter, a training plane that was rarely used in the country during World War II. He thought of a story. Could it be, please eliminate the 32 Type 97 heavy bombers in front? It's for real. It's really like this. My students have all died in battle, now it's time for me, the teacher, to go up. This sentence emerged in Chen Guang's heart. That's right, the current him, after all his own fighter planes were shot down by the enemy in 5 battles, he piloted a training plane alone on the 24th of July 1940, and took off from Wujing to meet the enemy's 32 heavy bombers. A real historical aerial battle. 1v32. Huge difference in model. Every enemy plane had 6 self-defense machine guns on it. There was a total of at least 160 self-defense machine guns. The backward Polikarpov IL-15 could only carry 2 light machine guns. This was not a small B fight. This was a real aerial battle. The Holy Grail used the black and white scenes in the documentary that Chen Guang had watched some time ago as a basis. It completely replicated this aerial battle that was enough to be recorded in the annals of human history using a black and white world. At that time, the highly skilled instructor with the surname Li took off with the determination to die, although because of his outdated equipment, he was unable to shoot down the enemy plane even after he had used up all his bullets, and in the end he had helplessly retreated, but he also created history. But now, the Holy Grail's requirement for Chen Guang was that he must shoot down all the enemy planes under the exact same combat conditions. Chapter 725. Did he have to go so far? 1 against 32 in a real aerial battle? Lord Guang expressed that the pressure was a little too much. Instructor Li was able to weave in and out of 32 enemy planes, entering and exiting 3 times without shooting down a single enemy plane. That was enough to go down in history. He was facing 160 self-defense machine guns. In that era when aircraft performance was relatively backward, it was practically an inescapable net with no chance of survival. In addition, it was extremely difficult for Chen Guang to shoot down the enemy planes. As a large bomber at that time, be it its size, weapon load, or even the degree of armor, it far exceeded the I-15's firepower. The shabby I-15 only had machine guns and no cannons. In real history, Instructor Li sent parts of the enemy planes flying into the sky, but he still could not shoot down a single enemy plane. In the end, he even tried to directly crash into the enemy plane that was drifting outside the formation with 2 reporters on board. It was not difficult to imagine how determined he was at that time as he tried to perish together with the enemy. However, the enemy plane pilot was equally skilled and managed to turn in time to avoid his crash. When he first saw this documentary on the internet, Chen Guang had high respect for this pilot who had taken off to face the enemy plane with the determination to die. However, he did not expect that not long after, he would personally play the role of Instructor Li in the World and Cup and have to complete the impossible mission that he had failed to complete. Perhaps, the reason why the Heavenly Holy Grail had recreated this period of history in a black and white world was because he had seen the documentary before. This seemed to have been preordained. Forget it. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Theoretically speaking, since he could accomplish the feat of killing bees with the wings of a large passenger plane in the FC world of the Little Bee, he could also do it in a real aerial battle. Although the sense of control in the black and white world was almost exactly the same as the Mosaic FC world of the Little Bee, the more realistic black and white scene, coupled with the heavy historical background of this matter, still gave him more pressure. However, he quickly adjusted his mood. Since there was this opportunity, he would try to complete the unfinished task of the martyrs in his world. He first closed his eyes tightly, then opened them abruptly. Qin Guang stretched out his hands and performed a series of rapid maneuvers that dazzled even his own eyes. The plane abruptly sped up and swooped forward. In the distance, densely packed black dots had already appeared on the horizon. It was the triangular formation formed by 31 planes and the other 97 heavy bomb that played the role of a reporter on the flank. Qin Guang's breathing gradually became heavy. He still remembered that when he first saw this precious historical material, the 4 guys in the dormitory almost burst into tears. They put themselves in his shoes. In the vast Wuxia, the Air Force had almost been wiped out in the crossfire with the enemy. 5 fierce air battles had broken out in the sky above the 5 capitals. Almost all of the pilots who had died were students he had been with day and night. After confirming that there was no longer a fighter plane that could take off, the enemy sent 32 heavy bombers at once with a swaggering mood, ready to stab the devastated city with another knife. At this time, the instructor surnamed Li climbed onto the backward training plane, took off alone with only 2 machine guns. What kind of mood did he have when he set off? What kind of decisiveness, what kind of courage to die? From the moment the engine was ignited at the airport, he had already regarded himself as a corpse. He didn't leave any last words. Even after he survived, he didn't make a sound and continued to silently dedicate himself in the 400,000,008 years. It wasn't until many years later that this dusty past was dug out from the historical materials of the invaders and made public. This unprecedented desperate battle in the history of aerial warfare finally appeared in front of the world. At this time, although the hero had passed away, his spirit would certainly be immortal. Even Qin Guang, a new-era college student who was deeply impacted by foreign culture, still cried when he saw this historical material. At this time, the roar of the I-15's engine became more ear-piercing, and the speed at which it moved forward was getting faster and faster. Qin Guang quickly pushed the performance of this relatively backward fighter plane to the extreme. He stared straight ahead, his eyes becoming more and more focused. At the same time, his heart was constantly pondering the way to win. Instructor Li's historical experience told him that he only had 2 light machine guns. It was impossible to directly destroy the enemy plane according to the conventional thinking of aerial combat. There was only one way to win, and that was to penetrate the cockpit of the enemy plane and directly kill the pilot. But this was not enough. There were a total of 7 people sitting on each 9-7 bomb, and perhaps there were backup pilots. Then each pilot of the enemy plane must be killed at least twice. This was almost an impossible task in a high-speed aerial battle. No matter how powerful a pilot was, it was impossible to accurately control the machine gun mounted on the nose of the plane while flying the plane. He also had to hit the enemy's cockpit while both sides were moving at high speed. But it did not matter. Today, Qin Guang was the strongest pilot in human history who had just been trained in the FC Little Bee world. He was the god of aerial combat. And he could resurrect and start over. Come on, little bastards. Enemy attack. Qin Guang pulled a full ship, changed direction and floated to the side. He was ready to cut into the enemy's formation from the side. He was like a stone thrown into the formation. In less than 10 seconds he flashed through the enemy's formation. He used the I-15's flexibility and maneuverability to the extreme, and passed through like a butterfly passing through flowers. The whole movement was done in one go and it was extremely smooth. In just a few seconds he performed at least 4 stunts that the I-15's performance could withstand. These stunts were not just to show off, but to make his position more erratic and unpredictable during close combat. At the same time he could constantly adjust his shooting angle. However, it was useless. After flying over, he only felt that his chest was empty. He looked down and saw a large pool of blood spreading out from inside. His back was also empty. It seemed that there was no support at all even if he tried to lie down. Qin Guang threw away his hands and slowly closed his eyes. How unlucky. His chest was shot through. 160 machine guns, blindly shooting at me. The firepower net was as ferocious as the nets used for fishing. There was no way to avoid it at all. After a long time, the roar of the engine reached his ears again. He was resurrected. Come on, little bastards. This time the engine was directly smashed and it crashed. Motherf***, I'll kill you all. This time it was even worse. He was blown up before he could even get close. After dying 17 or 18 times in a row, he finally realized one thing. It was a miracle that Instructor Lee was still alive. It was not that he was unlucky, but that Instructor Lee must have used a god-level cheat and had a full point of luck. Not to mention entering and exiting 3 times, the probability of being hit the first time he rushed through the enemy's formation was as high as 99%. His luck was normal, but Instructor Lee's was like a god's possession. This graduation exam was indeed extraordinary and should not be taken lightly. After collecting his thoughts, Qin Guang launched another attack. This time he slightly increased the speed by 3 kilometers per hour. He had completely touched the limits of the I-15's performance. In addition, before he got close to the enemy's formation, he changed directions even more crazily and used the Dutch roll that could only be controlled on a higher-level aircraft. The plane was erratic in the air, moving like a pendulum and quickly approaching. Creaking sounds came from the fuselage, as if it was going to fall apart in the next second. However, under Qin Guang's superb control, it firmly stepped on the critical point, not even half a step away from the lightning pool. Finally he rushed through. Although he did not fire a single shot, he finally rushed through successfully for the first time. Unlike Instructor Lee, this was not luck for him. It was the result of him constantly improving his own strength and constantly challenging and touching the limit. The two seemed to have the same result, but there was a fundamental difference. Instructor Lee's success could not be replicated, but Qin Guang's success could be repeated again and again after he started. His first successful experience opened a whole new world for him. In actual combat with Jinji, he finally came into contact with this feeling of always standing on the critical point. It was so mysterious, as if it was not a realm that humans could see at all. Many ace pilots before him might have touched this realm from time to time, but no one could go as far and as extreme as him. After dying 373 times, he finally managed to kill an enemy pilot on his first charge. After dying 1,787 times, he had finally killed every single pilot of the enemy aircraft once. After dying 3,935 times, Qin Guang waved his hands in a nearly hysterical manner. Success. All the pilots of the enemy planes died under his precise shot that pierced through the heart. Watching the 3297 BS explode one after another on the ground, turning into beautiful fireworks, Qin Guang clenched his fists tighter and tighter. I finally succeeded. This must be the most difficult flight graduation exam in history. Congratulations, Redeemer. You have passed the graduation exam. As soon as the heavenly Holy Grail finished speaking, the sun in the distance of the black and white world became even more dazzling, even dazzling people's eyes. I-15 was still rushing forward, but it was no longer under Qin Guang's control. Instead, it flew higher and higher straight into the sky. Suddenly, I-15 slowly disintegrated in the air, turning into stars that flew in all directions. Qin Guang's spiritual body was freed from it, but he still maintained the posture of rushing toward the sun. At the same time, the entire virtual black and white world quickly gathered, turning into the most primitive energy that gathered toward the sun in the sky. The ground below gradually distorted as if being sucked in by a whirlpool. The entire black and white world became smaller and smaller, but slowly regained its color. When Qin Guang came back to his senses, he once again appeared in the world of the FC-b. A fist-sized ball of light floated in front of him. Before he could figure out what was going on, the ball of light slammed into his head. After a long time he shook his head. There seemed to be something extra in his head. It seemed to be a feeling, but it was the feeling that was engraved in his mind during the battle just now. It was the feeling of touching the limit. The space-time tunnel behind him appeared again. The suction force came, the light and shadow reversed, and he appeared in the world within the Cloud City Cup. He was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he lay on the ground like a zombie, sorting out the many aircraft parameters that were forced into his head when he first entered the graduation exam. It took him a few days, especially when he recalled the data of the Airbus A330, before he left the world within the cup. In a sense, his current brain was the most comprehensive book of flight piloting in the history of mankind. Unfortunately, just like how he knew how to open a refrigerator, he didn't necessarily know how to build one. He knew how to operate these airplanes, but he didn't know how to build them. Otherwise, he could at least earn a few billion just by selling the hand-drawn blueprints of the U.S. Empire's fighter jets to the old men. When he opened his eyes, the noisy man in the command center was still lecturing him endlessly. He really had to admire his voice. Qin Guang coughed twice. He thought to himself, "Brother, you can shut up now. I can be your ancestor now." Chief Qin, compared to other large civil aircraft, the A330, "Brother, that's enough. Stop it. You've said this for the third time today. I think I see land in front of me. We're almost at the shore, right? According to the map, I'm probably near the Bohai Peninsula. Quickly help me find an airport, thank you." He had confidence in his heart. Naturally, the way he spoke was different from before, full of vigor. "Chief Qin, I have bad news. Please go ahead. I suggest you fly forward for another hour before considering landing. The area in front of you is currently experiencing a thunderstorm. I understand that, but I just had a new discovery. It seems that you can't synchronize the data on your side. The right engine is almost out of fuel." Qin Guang silently looked at the unlucky symbol on the dashboard. He didn't understand the symbol before, so he didn't think much of it. Now he finally understood. This plane must have stepped on the ancestral grave of some deity before taking off. This kind of bad luck is out of this world. After all this time, we've been leaking fuel for more than half an hour. There must have been a problem with the oil pipeline when we encountered the clear sky turbulence. After flying for so long, it slowly started leaking. Damn, this plane is really crazy. Qin Guang's mind began to recall the accident list of this unlucky A330 model over the years. Suddenly, his face was full of tears. This is a bit of a disaster. Forget it. Compared to others, at least my engine hasn't exploded. The remaining fuel can still fly for about half an hour. There's still hope. Bang. Boom. There are some things that you really can't think about, especially when your melon seeds have been blessed. A violent tremor came from the right side of the plane. The plane shook violently. Qin Guang used all his strength to hold onto the chair so that he didn't fall. The chief flight attendant beside him lost his grip and flew up. His head hit the corner of the control panel and he fainted. In the passenger cabin, the person sitting near the wing had completely collapsed. The engine was smoking. "Brother, quickly give me the coordinates. The right engine exploded and is on fire. I'm going to have to land." Qin Guang took a deep breath. He was jumping up and down in the cockpit with extreme speed. One person was like 3 people. He activated the auxiliary power and the emergency pressurization device to maintain the plane's balance. At the same time, he calmly spoke into the microphone. The newly minted Ace Flying Emperor, the new and hot human god of aerial combat, was about to face the extremely bad situation of a single-engine forced landing in a thunderstorm. This wretched god was really giving him face. Chapter 726. The person in charge of the command center on the other side was also dumbfounded. "Director Qin, did you go out today without looking at the almanac? Why did everything happen?" In fact, there is a legend in the civil aviation industry that trouble often does not walk alone. Behind one trouble there is often one trouble after another. An airplane is a big guy composed of thousands of parts. When these parts are in normal operation, civil aviation is the safest means of transportation in the world. But when flying in the sky, once a link goes wrong, it will often cause a series of chain reactions, evolving a small accident into a devastating disaster. Therefore, the security check of every airplane before takeoff is particularly important. Even if it is only a small screw problem, it will often cause irreparable consequences. A seemingly inconspicuous and subtle operation of the pilot can also put everyone in a situation of eternal damnation. Unlike driving and sailing, when an airplane flies at high altitudes, once something goes wrong, it is impossible to stop in the air for maintenance. Aviation is no small matter, the details show the real thing, this is the truth. Today, Qin Guang's plane was first hijacked. The gunfight in the cockpit and the destruction of the robbers caused many electronic equipment in the cockpit to be damaged. Then they encountered a rare clear sky turbulence at high altitudes. An engine was affected. If the crew was still alive, they might be able to repair it in time, but the crew had already been wiped out by the robbers. Qin Guang could only let it go. Before, he did not know how to repair it. Now that he has become the god of aerial combat, he also has a lot of knowledge in civil aviation. He can give it a try, but there is no time. He is the only one on the entire plane who can be relied on, and there is no one to help him. What's more, at this time when he is about to land, he encountered thunderstorms. It can only be said that the heavens are beautiful. As for the oil pipe leak and engine fire, It is said to be accidental, but in fact, it is the inevitable result of the previous clear sky turbulence and the lack of crew. Director Chin. Calm down. You must calm down. The person in charge of the Aviation Command Center shouted while desperately waving his hand to the staff around him to quickly come up with an emergency plan. On the one hand, they had to accurately locate DL 199333, and on the other hand, they had to immediately come up with a route plan. Qin Guang had already finished the workload for 3 people. It was useless to be anxious now, so he sat down again. Bro, I'm not in a hurry. I'm really not in a hurry. It sounds like you're even more anxious than I am. Little Qin, be strong. The old men were eavesdropping again. Qin Guang, come back alive. As long as you can come back alive, I'm yours. Alright, Jiang Yage was eavesdropping as well. Chief. Hurry up and give it a shot. Well, Xian Qin was also online. I say, everyone, can you not be so surprised? How big of a deal was that? Wasn't it just a forced landing? It's a piece of cake. Don't I still have an engine that can move? Back in the year 2001, wasn't there an A330 that glided for more than 100 kilometers without any power and landed safely with both of its engines blasted? What Qin Guang said was true. In the end, under the pilot's superb and calm operation, the plane made the longest glide flight in history and finally landed in the Azores Air Force Base. Only some of the passengers were injured, but no one was killed. It was hailed as one of the miracles in aviation history. Everyone was about to cry at his casual tone. They knew what he was talking about, but he was a top-notch pilot who had been flying for thousands of hours, while he was a newbie who hadn't even made any progress yet. How can we be compared with them? Besides, they have an entire crew to come up with ideas and rescue the plane. You're just a dabbler. How can we count on you? Alright, quickly draw out the route. I can only delay for 5 minutes at most before I have to descend into the troposphere. Can we talk less nonsense and do more practical things? Okay, right away. Chief Qin, I won't let you down. Qin Guang's calmness seemed to infect the people in the command center through the microphone. The person in charge over there clenched his teeth. He thought that even a true rookie like Chief Qin was so calm. His current performance was a bit unworthy of his identity. The elders in Beijing's conference room also fell into silence. They couldn't control their emotions as they imagined how desperate Qin Guang must be. If they were in Qin Guang's shoes, they wouldn't be as calm and confident as Qin Guang if they were in Qin Guang's shoes. This young man is really formidable. Unfortunately, it seems that he really can't escape this time, right? Only one engine in a thunderstorm, and the remaining fuel can only last for half an hour. Is there a worse situation than this? Even the aviation miracle of gliding 120 kilometers in 2001 couldn't compare to his current situation. Mr. Qin, the passengers are a bit out of control now. What should we do? At this moment, the flight attendants outside shouted from the communicator under the purser who had fallen to the ground, accompanied by some violent and furious screams. After seeing the engine hanging under the wing emit smoke, and the smoke was getting bigger and bigger, the passengers in the cabin finally couldn't sit still anymore. The situation outside was a bit out of control. If it wasn't for Sun Xiaoxuan being outside, Qin Guang wouldn't have bothered with these people at all. When he opened the cabin door, he saw many excited people crowding around the first-class cabin, desperately trying to squeeze their way forward. Several Pan Am flight attendants were trying their best to maintain order, but it was to no avail. Let us in. Such a big thing happened. We have the right to know. That's right. You found a pilot and a programmer, and now you tell us that everything is under control. We don't believe it. There must be something fishy going on. Who's in charge now? Who's flying the plane now? What situation are we in? You must give us an explanation. The crowd outside was indeed a bit out of control. Even Sun Xiaoxuan was pulled out. The passengers in the first-class cabin knew that Qin Guang was the current person in charge of the plane, but because Qin Guang and the flight attendants had been very calm, at least in front of them, these people had been able to sit still. However, when the people in the economy class told them that the engine was smoking, they couldn't sit still anymore. Are you Mr. Chen's female companion? Let Mr. Chen explain to us what's going on now. Sun Xiaoxuan was still sitting in her seat, but she was surrounded by many people. Even the guys who had been chatting with Qin Guang before were now angry. All of you shut up. What are you doing? Don't you know how busy I am now? He was so busy, but these guys were still causing trouble behind his back. Qin Guang was furious. I'm in a hurry to save a life. Who has time to be your commentator? I won't stop you if you want to die, but I don't want to die yet. I can only tell you that whether the people on this plane can live or not depends on whether I can safely make a forced landing. If you want to live, you'd better sit in your seats obediently. Everyone was shocked by Qin Guang's firm and confident attitude. Use your brains and think. What can you do except believe me now? You can't do anything. So, I'll be grateful if you don't make trouble. But we're afraid. A young passenger still said with some excitement. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang rushed out, stood in front of him and punched the young man in the head. The guy didn't even have time to scream before he fell to the ground and fainted. Come on, who else is afraid? I'm very good at comforting people. I guarantee that you'll see immediate results. One punch for one person and you'll know your place in minutes. Even if the plane really crashes, I'll let you die painlessly. This trick worked. Everyone immediately became a lot more obedient. The flight attendants also took the opportunity to help persuade them. At this time, everyone should not be petty. Besides believing in him, what else could they do? But Mr. Qin, you don't know how to fly a plane. Having said that, there were still people who understood at this time. Since the flight attendants asked if there was a pilot, it meant that this guy surnamed Qin was unreliable. That's right. We can't rest assured if we put our lives in your hands. The crowd began to make noise again. Qin Guang was very calm. Well, why don't you jump now? If you don't believe me, why don't you jump? Well, no one said anything again. Jump my ass. This is a plane, not a car. You can jump whenever you want. I don't know the rules on the plane very well, but your current behavior has seriously interfered with my control of the plane. Every time you talk nonsense with me, you bring everyone one step closer to heaven. If anyone thinks he has the ability, then stand up and give me a hand. Do you? After waiting for a few seconds, the crowd remained silent. Well, no. If you don't, then shut up. Sun Xiaoxuan, come here and sit with me in the cockpit. As Qin Guang spoke, he took out the gun that he had picked up from the ground and continued, Now, I'll kill anyone who dares to cause trouble and drag everyone down with him. I'm a man of my word, and you can try if you don't believe me. After that, Qin Guang really took Sun Xiaoxuan in, and then closed the cockpit door, ignoring these idiots outside. His quite fierce reaction really subdued the crowd. Until the cockpit door was closed, no one outside dared to say a word. The flight attendant in charge of maintaining order took a deep breath and then said, Please return to your seats. The plane may have some violent turbulence, and if you leave your seat you may really be injured. If the plane really crashes, the seat belt can also increase the chance of survival for everyone. Although the situation is indeed very bad, please believe in Mr. Qin. He is our only hope. In fact, everyone knew that the flight attendant was right. They had no choice but to trust Qin Guang. On the other side, Qin Guang returned to the cockpit. Calling command, calling command. The right wing engine can no longer be repaired. It has completely lost power, and there is a possibility of a second explosion at any time. The remaining fuel can only support 28 minutes and 36 seconds. I will start to lower the altitude. Calling DL 199333. The nearest airport to you is Jiaodao Air Force Base, 73 kilometers away. There is a runway there that is enough for the A330 to land. You are about to enter a thunderstorm zone. Please take frost protection measures. At this time, the conference room in Yanjing was so silent that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The room where Xan Qin and Wu Miaoan were in was also solemn. In a hotel far away in the United Kingdom, Jiang Yage and Jin Shirui were also sitting quietly. Everyone had thousands of words in their hearts, but they could not open their mouths. No one was really optimistic about Qin Guang, but at this moment, what choice did they have but to rely on him? Even if they were desperate, even if they always regretted that they had thousands of words to say to him, but they could not finish them, everyone resisted the urge to speak at this time. They did not dare to make a sound to disturb him. On the other side, Qin Guang's communication with the command center continued. The frost protection measures have already been taken. Next. So fast? The people in the command center were stunned at first. After all, in his mind, Qin Guang was just a half-baked person who sharpened his spear at the last minute. Ordinary people could not think of this frost protection measures. As the two of them were talking, the altitude of the plane had gradually decreased. Hundreds of people in the command center were solemnly waiting. Although they could not remotely control the plane, after a long period of technical research, the command center had a better grasp of the operating parameters of the plane. The more they knew, the more they could help the pilot on the plane to make decisions, and the faster the command center could come up with suggestions and tell Qin Guang on the plane what to do. It sounded simple, but the probability of success was extremely low. For a person who had never been in contact with piloting a flight, even if he had grasped some of the operating methods of the instruments and equipment through intensive study, how could he react in such an urgent situation? Moreover, he was just a dabbler. In an air crash, every step of the operation was a race against time. A delay of a few seconds would cause the plane to fall into an irrecoverable situation. First of all, the current situation of the plane was not known by the command center through normal information channels. There was a serious lag in the information, and it could not be adjusted in real time. Secondly, after Qin Guang received instructions, it was very likely that he would not be able to find the instrument. The person in charge of the command center was very worried that it would take him a few minutes to fine-tune the parameters. Every step was delayed by a few minutes. This was a catastrophic impact in a race against time landing, not to mention the situation was so bad that it was almost impossible to land successfully. Now, in the heart of the person in charge, the hundreds of experts in the command center and the things they were doing might not even be counted as doing their best and leaving it to fate. In general, it could only be regarded as a struggle that was better than nothing. Until the last moment, never give up. In the history of human aviation, about 1/3 of the air crashes were caused by extreme weather, and the remaining 2/3 were caused by things such as hijacking, equipment failure, errors in the command center, or pilot error. But there had never been a flight as unlucky as today. First, there was a hijacking, then there was a clear sky turbulence, and then one of the engines was completely destroyed. In addition, the contact between the plane and the ground command center was also left with the most basic intercom function for a long time. All other synchronized information was lost for a time, and after it was restored, it was seriously delayed. In the entire history of civil aviation, this was unprecedented. Not to mention that there would be no one in the future, but before this, there were really not many people who could be so unlucky. No, not to mention the history of civil aviation, this was unprecedented in the entire history of aviation. Chapter 727. The person in charge of the command center clenched his fists. In his heart, he imagined Director Chen's desperation and determination at this moment, and he silently shed 2 lines of tears. No matter what the result was, to dare to sit in the cockpit at this time and take over the responsibility of the deceased captain, Director Chen, you're a good man. Then he quickly discovered that something was wrong. The person in front of him didn't seem to know anything. The left wing has been impacted. Pushed down by 5 degrees. It's done. The left wing engine is frosted. Stall. Start the turbocharger. It's been started for a minute. The left wing engine has been successfully reignited. Power distribution. It's done. We've left the clouds. Lift the wings. The current wind direction is. Okay. You're now 71 kilometers away from Jiaodao Airport. Direction 270. Adjustments have been completed. We're now in a single-engine propulsion state. Can you directly tell me which direction to turn? Also, I can't maintain an altitude of 39,000 feet. I have to push down to 33,000 feet. At this time, the person in charge's face was simply filled with confusion. Strange. Where did the problem go? Why the hell is it that every time we make a decision you complete it on your side? Have you really never flown a plane before? Also, can you really handle it alone? How did Qin Guang manage to handle it? The bitterness of it was simply not worth telling others. Only Sun Xiaoxuan and the purser, who were also in the cockpit fastening themselves to their seat belts, could only watch anxiously. This guy's legs seemed to have springs installed on them. One moment he appeared in the captain's seat, his hands fiercely pressing the instruments at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly ran to the right auxiliary seat, pulled down a wrench and fiercely jabbed at the pile of buttons. In the next moment he jumped back again. He operated the instruments on both sides by himself. He was simply too busy. When his hands waved quickly, Sun Xiaoxuan could even see a mirage. At this life and death moment, seeing Qin Guang busying himself with the lives of an entire plane, yet he couldn't help at all, Sun Xiaoxuan felt both disappointed and amazed. Looking at him, it didn't seem like he was blindly pressing. Could it be that this was the legendary secret technique, repeated horizontal jumps? How strange. At such a tense moment I actually want to laugh? Sun Xiaoxuan thought that he might be crazy. When he was sitting in the first-class cabin outside, he didn't know how critical the situation was, but after he came in he saw that Qin Guang was doing the work of several people. From time to time he would jump up and down between the 2 drivers' seats, and from time to time he would grab the operating computer and press madly on it, crazily entering data and calculating values. How could Sun Xiaoxuan not understand how dangerous the situation was when he saw how tired and sweaty he was? Yet he didn't know tiredness or rest. But what was inconceivable was that he was not afraid at all. He had never given up and he had never thrown caution to the wind like this. He would definitely be fine. I trust him. Command Center. This is number 333. I have successfully passed through the clouds. There is ice on the right wing engine. I have activated the auxiliary de-icing equipment and am now turning, Chen Guang said as he pulled down the manual switch. If the plane could be piloted automatically, it would be able to deal with the problem when the detector detected the ice forming. But now he could only rely on manual control. Very good. The runway of Jiaodao Airport has been prepared. It is 3,000 meters long. Please maintain a stable flight. This runway is a little short. Yes, but it should be enough. Wait, your number 1 and number 2 slits have malfunctioned. Your information is lagging by a minute. I have already eliminated the malfunction. This was all done by Chen Guang a minute ago. The Airbus A330 was the technological crystallization of modern society. It had condensed countless lessons and wisdom accumulated over 100 years of human aviation history. It had the corresponding ability to deal with many unexpected situations. At this time, the person in charge of the command center suddenly realized one thing. The situation was really a bit abnormal. The person in charge of controlling the plane was not like a newbie at all. On the contrary, he was an extremely experienced veteran pilot. He didn't seem to need the technical guidance from his side at all. Every time he made a decision, he walked ahead of the hundreds of experts on his side. Even if the information was lagging, the speed at which he made decisions was a bit too fast. Calling Flight 333. Your right wing has lost power. The steering performance is insufficient. The tail needs to be rotated by 7 degrees. It has already been rotated. Thank you. Damn, are you really a virgin? The man in charge of the aviation center wanted to give himself a slap. His balls hurt like hell. Every time I help you make a decision, you always tell me that it has already been settled. You tell me what should I do? Should I say it or not? If the other side was an experienced captain, in such a tense moment, the ground command center would indeed not waste any more words. They should let the captain controlling the plane concentrate on making decisions. The plane was flying in the air. The person who understood the situation the most and could directly control the plane was always the captain. The ground command center should and could only do that. That was to choose to believe in the captain and provide information support. After all, no one wanted to survive more than the people on the plane. But Chen Guang was not a real captain at all. Before this, he didn't even have the experience of flying a plane. This made the situation of the person in charge of the command center especially difficult. Tell me, what should I do now? Should I believe you? Can I believe you? Will everything I say help you or not? Do you need a person to think calmly and make decisions, or do you need me, the person in the ground command center, to help you from a distance? He didn't know whether it was better for him to shut up or to continue to give suggestions. At this time, they were only 64 kilometers away from Jiaodong Airport. There were less than 15 minutes before they landed. Every second was too precious. Hearing this, the old man Xan Qin, Wu Miaowan, and Jin Shiriyue, who was far away in Europe, also realized this problem. In these few minutes, Chen Guang's performance was a bit too monstrous. He didn't look like he was flying a plane for the first time. Brother, I know what you are thinking now. Yes, that's right. You only need to provide me with information support. As for decision-making, leave it all to me. You can shut up now. Chen Guang's voice came from the communication device again. Yes, at this time, it was meaningless to accept the delayed orders from the command center. Okay. The person in charge of the command center sighed helplessly. There was indeed no other choice. Right at this moment, Chen Guang suddenly made a decision. He had just sensed a slight tremor, but there was something unusual about it. Xiaoxuan, go to the passenger cabin and take a look. Stand by the window and look at the engine hanging on the wing. Pay special attention to whether there is a white misty line behind the engine. Sun Xiaoxuan quickly untied the safety belt and took him out. In fact, this matter should have been done by the purser, but at this time the purser was still in a daze. Chen Guang didn't have time to contact other flight attendants. Sun Xiaoxuan returned to the passenger cabin. The passengers here had already been comforted by the flight attendants and sat upright in their respective seats. They were tightly fastened with seat belts. From time to time, there was the sound of crying in the cabin. The atmosphere of tension, pessimism, and despair continued to spread in the cabin. Sun Xiaoxuan could even smell the emotion called despair in the air. Taking a deep breath, Sun Xiaoxuan squeezed out a faint smile on his face and then quickly walked forward with the help of the aisle. Going straight to the window next to the wing, Sun Xiaoxuan looked up. The passenger next to the wing hurriedly asked, "Are you a staff member? How on earth is the plane now?" Sun Xiaoxuan retracted his gaze and gave a slight smile. Everything is as usual. The one piloting the plane right now is the most outstanding person in the world. He knows how to fly a plane and is very professional. Everything is under control. Please fasten your seatbelt. We will land safely. After saying that, she quickly walked to the cockpit. Unlike last time, although the atmosphere was extremely solemn, the efforts of the flight attendants made everyone calm down. Everyone knew that even if they committed suicide now, they should never disturb the staff. Sun Xiaoxuan walked very fast, almost trotting all the way back to the cockpit. Closing the door, she said very quickly, "The right engine is still smoking." Qin Guang replied, "Very good. I have turned on the automatic fire extinguisher in advance. There is only smoke. The fire has been controlled. Is there any obvious damage to the wing?" "No, but there seems to be a long white line behind the engine. It is very thin. It is leaking oil, but I have cut off the fuel supply to the right engine in advance. All right, go back to your cabin. Everyone should be quiet by now." Qin Guang was still very calm. "No, I want to stay here with you." Qin Guang coughed lightly and then roared fiercely, "I will only say this once. Go back. Don't waste my time." Sun Xiaoxuan's face froze. Of course, she knew what Qin Guang meant by this sentence. In an emergency landing, the most dangerous position was, of course, the cockpit. If the plane hit the ground head first, the people sitting in the passenger cabin had a chance to survive, but the people in the cockpit had absolutely no chance to survive. He let her go at this time because he was trying his best to ensure his survival. He was ready to die. In fact, Sun Xiaoxuan guessed right. Although Qin Guang was already the best pilot in history, when the plane was flying in the air, you never knew what would happen in the next moment. Who could say that the pilots who died in the air crash were not excellent? Struggling to survive in the face of disaster and snatching life from the hands of death, in addition to ability, luck was also indispensable. Unfortunately, so far, everyone on the plane was extremely unlucky. Obviously, the goddess of luck was on the other side of the earth today. Chapter 728. At this time, the purser had also completely recovered her senses. She patted Sun Xiaoxuan on the shoulder. "Little girl, I know you're worried about your lover, but it's precisely at times like this that you should listen to him." "But you guys," the purser said with a solemn expression, "I'm a staff member of this plane. I have the responsibility and obligation to be on standby here at all times. As for Mr. Qin, he's a great man." On the other side, Qin Guang no longer paid attention to the situation behind him. Instead, he once again focused all his attention on piloting the plane. One person playing the role of two pilots and a technician was simply too tiring. Sun Xiaoxuan tightly pursed her lips and looked deeply at Qin Guang's back. Finally, she opened the cabin door and returned to the first-class cabin. She pulled out her seat belt and fastened it. The people around her all gathered their heads, wanting to ask her about the situation. However, Sun Xiaoxuan put away the fear in her heart. A calm smile once again appeared on her face. "It's all right. He's very confident now. Everyone just needs to believe in him with me." At this time, Qin Guang's voice came from the loudspeaker. "Hello, passengers. I am your captain, Qin Guang. The plane will land at Jiaodao Airport in 12 minutes and 30 seconds. I will bring you back alive. Thank you, everyone." When the ground control tower heard Qin Guang's words, it was also silent. Regardless of whether he could succeed in the end, or whether he knew how to fly a plane as a passenger, he bravely sat in the most dangerous position of the captain at this special time. He fought for the lives of the 300 people on the plane. He was indeed great enough. In fact, before today, the image of Qin Guang in the hearts of the old masters wasn't very high. Perhaps he was just a lucky person with good luck and a bit of talent. He had obtained the favor of the god of fate, which was why he was able to become the friend of someone like Sect Master One. He was also extremely close to Old Master Lin's grandson, Lin Jingwei, and had also learned some extraordinary skills, which allowed him to do very well in the online world. But why did Sect Master One admire him? Why did Jin Shiyue become infatuated with him? Why did Jiang Yage also seem to like him? Why did martial artists like Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan willingly become his deputy bureau chief? Why did he always make the people around him involuntarily take him as their master? Even an illustrious third generation like Lin Jingwei, who coincidentally lived in the same dormitory as him, was willing to be his little brother. Even a proud son of heaven like Bai Hua quickly became his friend. At this moment, these old masters, who boasted that they had seen too many life and death situations, finally understood that the most precious thing about this kid was this. If it was anyone else in his current situation, they would not be able to do better than him. They would not be able to be braver and more responsible than him. He had a kind of spirit. No matter how big the matter was, he would not be afraid and he would be able to handle it. It was really hard to imagine that he had never flown a plane before today, but at this moment he was able to perform so professionally and so calmly. This was no longer as simple as the younger generation being to surpass the older. He was simply a genius. A great genius. He was a genius who could carry a mountain on his shoulders, an A330, and 300 lives on his shoulders. At this moment, in a place that Qin Guang couldn't see, 4 girls were tightly covering their mouths. They were afraid that the sound of their sobs would be transmitted over there and disturb Qin Guang. The hundreds of staff in the China Airlines command center could understand Qin Guang's current situation. But they were all wrong. They thought that the current Qin Guang had performed perfectly and was sufficiently experienced, but they did not expect that the true ace pilot skills were just beginning. If he succeeded, this would be a forced landing that would go down in the annals of history. Calling the command center, I don't have time to do flight control checks. I will shut down the left engine and enter a full glide state. Qin Guang spoke into the communicator as he rapidly controlled the plane. Only one engine can be started. I don't have a second chance. Please report the airport wind speed and direction. Wind direction 180 degrees, wind speed 10 knots. Very good, it just happens to be a south wind against the wind. The plane continued to descend, much faster than a normal descent. After all, there was only a distance of 60 kilometers left for him. This distance might be very far for a vehicle, but for a plane, it was only a matter of 10 minutes. Does number 333 require assistance in calculating the landing speed? No need, I am currently checking the remaining fuel. The left engine has 684 tons of fuel remaining. I will land at 154 knots. That's too fast. The distance is too short. I must reduce the altitude as soon as possible, but I also have to speed up a little before landing. Otherwise I will fall straight down. The person in charge of the command center no longer questioned Qin Guang's decision. In fact, he had already made a major mistake. No matter whether the captain's decision was right or wrong, in a situation where the information was not synchronized as the ground commander, he had to unconditionally trust the captain's decision. But in his heart he could not help but scream crazily, "How did you calculate 154 knots? The plane was getting closer and closer to Jiaodong Airport. There were not many opportunities left for Qin Guang. He controlled the altitude at a very dangerous level and maintained the glide to land. The plane made a large circle in the air to aim at the runway. Because the electronic control system was completely out of contact with the ground, Qin Guang could only continuously adjust the angle according to the verbal instructions of the ground command center's radar. The thunderstorm had stopped a lot at this time, but the gloomy sky and drizzling rain still made visibility very poor. Even more unfavorable was that because the right engine had exploded, the plane had lost 65% of its steering performance. This caused his circle to be much larger than normal. The glide height exceeded the warning line, and he had to increase his speed slightly to maintain his altitude. If the autopilot system could still be used, in the process of increasing speed with a single engine, the plane could use the precise values calculated by the computer to adjust the amplitude of the tail fins. But now this had to be done by Qin Guang himself. The chief flight attendant sat rigidly in the back, watching Qin Guang's amazing operation. She had been a flight attendant for more than 10 years, but she had never thought that a person could actually control the plane so steadily in fully manual mode. Was this guy's brain filled with a computer? How did he calculate the angle? Similar questions popped up in the chief flight attendant's mind again. What was even more frightening was that in such a busy manual operation, it was as if one person was doing the work of several people at the same time. One moment he would turn on this switch, the next moment he would press that button. In the process, he would occasionally pay attention to the constantly refreshed alerts on the central monitoring system. And from time to time, his hand would reach out like lightning to deal with the central monitoring system's alert information. Are you even human? F*CK, this is so tiring. On the other side, Qin Guang finally had the plane completely aimed at the runway. He shook his hands. In fact, his hands and feet were not tired. It was just that he was mentally exhausted from holding on for so long as he was the pilot of 3 people. Please verify that the plane is completely aimed at the runway. Also, number 333, your current speed is too fast. Alright, brother. Everything is under control. When I open the landing gear, the wind resistance will increase. At a wind speed of 10 knots against the wind, this speed is just right. Seeing that success was imminent, Qin Guang was relieved. Brother, are you kidding me? How can the god of aerial combat not aim at the runway? You don't know how good my eyes are. When I throw a dart, I can clearly see the legs of a fly dozens of meters away. Right now, with just my eyes, they are even more accurate than a radar, okay? I will treat this plane and myself as a big dart and throw it directly. As for the speed, don't worry, young man. It looks a little fast, but this is the precise calculation of the old man. Alright, it's completely the intuition of an ace pilot. I can stop. The runway is 3,000 meters long. I can stop at 2,950 meters. I can guarantee that the error is no more than 5 meters. Brag, my pride and indulgence. For some reason, his mind was not thinking. As he calmly adjusted the nose of the plane, at the same time, he pulled open the manual landing gear switch. He was actually humming a song. Brother, why are you singing? The purser and the person on the other end of the communication device stared with their eyes wide open. You are really calm. At this time, the person in charge of the command center finally could not hold it in anymore. Chief Qin. Your right speed pedal can't be opened. You only have a single engine and the reverse thrust can't be used. Yes, I know. I knew it a long time ago. I really don't want to explain to you the maximum pressure that the A330's tires can withstand. I can only tell you that this is the only way for me to land. If not, if I slow down even a little, I will fall headfirst. Also, I can accurately tell you that out of 10 of my brakes, 6 will explode, but not a single person will die. I will stop at 2,950 meters. I will not go off the runway. At this moment, Qin Guang was unhappy with the commotion coming from the other party. What are you crying for? I've already noticed all of this, alright? If I waited for you to remind me, I would have died 7 or 8 times. What? You can even calculate how many tires will explode when you stop. Don't be so pretentious. Also, what's with the 2,950 meters you mentioned? I have never heard of a pilot who can calculate so accurately during a forced landing. This is still an emergency landing. And it is a military runway that is much shorter than a normal runway. It is only 3,000 meters. I don't know why, but I feel that you are bragging. At a time like this, can we be a little more normal? Even though he was cursing in his heart, the pitiful person in charge of the command center had no choice but to swallow the thousands of words he wanted to say. Again, he could not say anything, especially not to disturb the captain. I want to fly very high. You are singing again. The commander of the command center gritted his teeth. He once again doubted his professionalism. He really wanted to interrupt this guy. The plane finally approached the runway. The ground control tower looked nervously at DL199333 on the screen. The hundreds of people in the China Airlines command center clenched their fists. Their palms were sweating from nervousness. In the next few seconds, this disaster-ridden Airbus A330 would meet its final fate. The others who were further away weren't any better off. The cabin was even more solemn. Everyone was so nervous that they could not breathe. Sun Xiaoxuan's hands were clenched tightly. She did not pray to any god. She just kept thinking in her heart. Qin Guang said that everyone would be safe and sound. He would not lie. What he said, he would definitely keep his word. When the wheels of the landing gear touched the ground, there was a burst of ear-piercing noise. The plane was shaking violently. Life and death were separated by a thin line. The moment before the landing was the most dangerous moment of the entire process. There was also the biggest difficulty here. When a normal plane was about to land, it usually needed to maintain autopilot for a period of time. The computer would distribute power and control the engine. At the same time, it would turn on various deceleration devices to adjust the speed. But Qin Guang did not have any of these. The plane had stalled to the point where it was constantly descending. Only a single engine could not provide stable power. There was no autopilot system to adjust the opening degree of the flaps for him. All of this had to be manually controlled by him. An experienced pilot could rely on his feelings to find out the opening degree of the flaps and leave the fate to his own intuition. But in the eyes of others, Qin Guang was a complete novice. It was impossible for him to have any experience. In other words, even an experienced pilot could not rely solely on human strength to be more accurate than the computer's calculation. But the fact was that during the entire gliding and landing process, Qin Guang had really relied on the fine adjustments of his fingers to control the opening degree of the flaps to the peak. When he said that the plane would land at 154 knots, it was exactly the same, not an inch more. Apart from that, the landing angle was also a big difficulty. But Qin Guang had controlled the height of the nose of the plane perfectly. All the wheels touched the ground almost at the same time. The moment the 10 wheels touched the ground, Qin Guang slammed on the brakes. He raised the nose of the plane to prevent it from falling upside down. At the same time he began braking. Creaking sounds rang through every part of the plane. All the parts started to shake wildly. Everyone in the cabin screamed. The people on the other side of the communication device could even hear the terrifying creaking sounds. The commanders in the control tower of Jiaodong Airport, the firefighters and ambulances waiting nearby watched as the plane's tires sprouted thick smoke due to the intense friction. The drizzle could not stop the tires from quickly heating up due to the intense friction. Just as the person in charge of the command center had said, landing at 154 knots was too fast. The plane quickly charged past half of the runway. With a loud bang, the first 2 tires at the front of the plane exploded due to being unable to withstand the terrifying impact and friction. The steel frame below the nose of the plane smashed heavily against the ground and then broke. The nose of the plane completely touched the runway, bringing with it a path of sparks as it quickly advanced. Terrifying heat rose from the bottom of the plane. The engine fairing hanging under the wings scraped against the ground. The sparks were as bright as the sun on the ground. The parts flew along the way. I am a little bird. I want to fly but I can't fly high. What time was this? You're still singing. Just as everyone was so nervous their hearts were about to burst out of their throats, Qin Guang's broken gong-like voice, the off-key singing that went to the Pacific Ocean, came out of the communication device again. It almost made people think they were hallucinating. It wasn't until he began to sing the next line, "I'm looking for a warm embrace, is this request too high?" that everyone believed that he was really singing. You're crazy. You're not only the first pilot in history to perform an emergency landing without any flying experience, you're the only pilot in history to sing off-key while landing. What a lunatic. Chapter 729. Actually, this really couldn't be blamed on Qin Guang. First of all, was he afraid at this time? Of course he was still a bit afraid. Even an ace pilot couldn't withstand the explosion of an air crash. But based on his many years of piloting experience, he determined that although this kind of landing looked very frightening, the success rate wasn't low. Therefore, at this time he was in a very complicated state of mind. He looked like he was afraid, but no matter what was said at this time, all of his energy was focused on the plane that was rubbing against the ground. This kind of highly concentrated state was like a person walking while thinking about things, thinking about them and involuntarily humming a song. Therefore, the sparks and lightning on the runway continued, and Qin Guang's song didn't stop. For the current him, he probably only needed to do one thing, and that was to step on the brakes with all his might. As for everything else, everything was under control. Don't panic because panicking was useless. Before landing, he had already used his ability as an ace pilot to do the job of 3 people. He had done all the necessary things and left the rest to fate. When the plane finally ran 3/4 of the way across the runway, it was just as he said. The middle section of the 4 tires had also burst, and most of the fuselage was pressed against the ground. The sparks it brought were even more dazzling, and the scene looked simply ghastly. Fortunately, there were still the last 2 sets of 4 wheels to support it, not allowing the wing with the fuel tank to stick to the ground. Fire trucks and ambulances had long since rushed out from their respective standby positions, madly rushing to the end of the airport runway. Everyone's fists were tightly clenched, and the commander of the command center's eyes were glued to the screen. With every meter the A330 advanced, his heart rose an inch higher into his throat. Stop. Stop it for me. Don't rush anymore. We're going to rush out of the runway. Jiaodao Airport was a military base, and there simply wasn't as much room for the runway as there was for civilian bases. At the end of the runway was a dense forest with uneven ground. If they couldn't control it and rushed out, the wing that was already on the verge of collapse would inevitably break. In particular, there was still a lot of fuel left in the fuel tank of the left wing. Once the wing was seriously damaged, a large amount of fuel would leak out. Considering the ultra-high temperature produced by the friction between the fuselage and the ground, as long as this fuel came into contact with it, it would definitely ignite. Once it ignited, it would explode. I didn't believe in God before, but now I have to pray to the God of aviation. God, make number 333 stop, hurry up and stop. Oh God, please bless 333's wings, bless 333's fuel tank, bless everyone on this plane. An air crash could only be considered safe if everyone was evacuated, because no one knew what would happen in the next moment. A disaster would always happen in an instant. The plane was priceless, but the lives of the passengers on board were even more important. Every time there was an air crash, it brought irreparable pain to the world. Aviation was no small matter, so every time there was an abnormal situation on the plane, as long as it could provide help to save the disaster, everyone would be mobilized in an instant. As long as it could increase the chance of survival for the people on the plane, everyone did not mind putting in the greatest effort. But today the gigantic A330 and the more than 300 lives on it were all placed in the hands of a person who had no flying experience at all. Moreover, the person had persisted until the final stage of the forced landing. This was the first time in aviation history that such a thing had happened. There are only 2 steps left, hurry up and stop. Oh my God. Bless us. The person in charge of the command center prayed in his heart once again. His prayer would definitely come true because in human history, the only living god of aerial combat, the god of aviation, the god he prayed to, was on the plane. This god was singing, stepping on the brakes, and looking at the forest that was getting closer and closer. Qin Guang, why don't I teleport you, but the price is very heavy. I might sleep for 100 years, really 100 years, but you definitely won't die. There's no way to stop. At this time, even Lioli was starting to feel uncertain. However, Qin Guang shook his head fiercely. This time he didn't talk to Lioli in his heart but shouted out loud, "Are you kidding me? There are still 2 tires that haven't burst. How can I leave? If I leave, who will step on the brakes?" I said 2,950 meters, so it must be 2,950 meters. Absolutely. Never. Charge out. The chief flight attendant behind him didn't know who he was talking to, nor could she understand his roar in Mandarin. However, she could hear the determination in Qin Guang's voice, and from the bulging veins on the back of his neck, she could tell how much strength he was exerting in his arms and legs. The chief flight attendant glanced at the alarm again. The hydraulic auxiliary system had already failed. The intense friction had basically rendered the hydraulic auxiliary system on the plane useless. This meant that he was using the last of his human strength to fight against the brakes of this huge object. Oh my God. What are you still stepping on? In the face of this destructive power, what use is a little bit of human strength? No, he hadn't given up yet. What he was doing was not meaningless. Even if it was just a little bit of strength, it might just be the last straw to stop the plane. Even if there were only 4 wheels left, he wouldn't let go. The forest and the wall were getting closer and closer, as if they were right in front of him. The chief flight attendant no longer paid attention to the situation on the dashboard. Instead, she shut her eyes tightly. 200 meters. 150 meters. 100 meters. 80 meters. 60 meters. 50 meters. 47 meters. It had stopped. The plane had stopped. Roar. The moment the plane finally stopped, all the ground crew members raised their arms and shouted in unison. The firefighters and ambulances let out ear-piercing roars as they rushed toward the plane. After a brief moment of confusion, the people on the plane began to scream and roar. The feeling of escaping from death was hard to describe. Tears of joy were not enough to describe it. It was as if a lifetime had passed. Their hearts felt as if someone had viciously dug them out from their chests and then pressed them back down. Thank God. Thank God for our captain, Qin Guang. Our godlike captain. Our great captain. The person in charge of the command center felt his body go limp. He sat down on the ground, sweating profusely. He had only been standing in front of the monitor, watching from thousands of kilometers away, but he was still so nervous that he felt like he was about to collapse. Chief Qin. You're really godlike. Qin Guang sat in the captain's seat, his whole body limp. He wiped the sweat off his face and flicked his fingers. Haha, it's nothing. The scenery of Jiaodao is not bad. How did you do it? 6 tires burst, 2,950 meters of braking distance, and you only missed by 3 meters. Qin Guang wiped his sweat again. It's still not perfect. The hydraulic system malfunctioned, and the last half of the plane lost its braking force. The last 4 wheels were not fully utilized. Otherwise, it would have been 2,950 meters. It was a miscalculation. I even bent the brake pedal, but it's still useless. The quality of your steel is too bad. The person in charge of the aviation center, the old men in Beijing's conference room, Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan far away in the 5 capitals, Lin Jingwei who was quietly eavesdropping, Jin Shiyue and Jiang Yage in the London hotel. In the end, everyone had the same thought in their minds. What a beast. Okay, everyone, my mission is not over yet. After he greeted everyone in the communication device, Qin Guang sat up straight with a smile on his face. He picked up the walkie-talkie with one hand and pressed the emergency button with the other. He calmed himself down and spoke in a calm tone. Hello, passengers. I am the substitute captain of this flight, Qin Guang. The plane has landed successfully. Please check if your belongings are. Anyway, please leave the cabin in an orderly manner. I have turned on the emergency evacuation system. Please do not push or panic when you leave. Leave in an orderly manner. The fuel tank is well protected by me. There is no leakage. Everything is okay. In short, thank you for your trust. I did not let you down. Mother Earth protects us. The cabin once again burst into deafening cheers. This time, everyone was really sure that they were safe. Outside the window, a total of 8 fire trucks had rushed over and were spraying low-temperature fire-extinguishing foam at the floor and fuselage. Although there was no open fire at this time, cooling down was the first priority. The person in charge of the China Airlines command center widened his eyes. Even though he heard Qin say it lightly once, he still could not believe his eyes. He stared blankly at DL-199333 lying dead on the ground. It was exactly as he said. 6 tires burst and stopped at about 2,950 meters. Unbelievable, this was a beginner flying a plane for the first time. How did you do it? How did you know it would be like this? After experiencing hijacking, clear air turbulence and equipment malfunctions, including but not limited to the complete failure of the right wing engine, transmission malfunctions, the failure of the deceleration pedal, and the inability to use the reverse thrust of the engine, a novice pilot who had touched an airplane for the first time passed through the thunderstorm and survived with more than 300 people. And you were alone. You did the work of the entire flight crew alone. No co-pilot, no pilot, no autopilot assistance. You are a living miracle. This is a godlike forced landing. You are a godlike beginner. Wait, are you a god? Are you still human? If this person had the chance to personally ask this question in front of Qin would definitely be happy to answer him. Yes, that's right, young man, standing in front of you is indeed the strongest pilot in history, a living god of aerial combat. I can fly civil aviation, but I can fly fighter jets even more. Don't panic, this forced landing is just a small test. Pressing the last emergency unblocking button, accompanied by a poochie sound, the air slides under the emergency exits on both sides of the A330 rapidly expanded and extended. Then the emergency exit doors opened, and the crowd rushed down with cheers. Everyone's expression was exceptionally complicated. There was the ecstasy of escaping death and there was the paleness of shock. When they really did land on the ground from the air slides, they finally confirmed that they were completely out of danger. These people almost hysterically ran forward for a distance, or threw themselves into the arms of the rescue team, or lay limp on the ground. Some people were bawling to vent their emotions, while others were wiping their tears and taking out their phones to call their families, but they were immediately stopped. Others were hugging the rescue team to vent their emotions hysterically. Qin took a deep breath and stood up from the captain's seat. The well-trained purser had already gone outside one step ahead of him. She had to stand on her last shift and maintain the evacuation order. Sun Xiaoxuan was not in a hurry to leave with the others. She waited until everyone had quickly walked out of the corridor, and then she got up and walked to the cockpit. Her heart was pounding, and the thought in her heart was getting hotter and hotter. She wanted to fiercely hug him, she wanted to rub her body into the crook of his arm, she wanted to fiercely stick her lips to his, she wanted to crazily suck and smell his scent. In the past 2 days she had really experienced too much with him. He was so perfect, so outstanding, so outstanding. Perhaps she was not worthy of him at all. Compared to the other girls who liked him, she was really insignificant, like an ugly duckling in a corner. But it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I'm not beautiful enough, not smart enough, not mature enough, and I don't have an illustrious status like the others. I really can't help him too much. But it doesn't matter, I have a heart that just wants to melt together with him. Sun Xiaoxuan walked faster and faster towards the cockpit as he thought about it. The cabin door had been opened a long time ago, and a faint light shone through the glass. A tall figure that could make one's soul yearn for a long time appeared in the cabin door, looking a little tired. He slightly lowered his head and his steps were a little unsteady. He even had to hold on to the door frame when he walked and he almost fell. Qin, are you all right? Sun Xiaoxuan's footsteps suddenly stopped. The slightly tired Qin looked up and saw Sun Xiaoxuan and her misty eyes. What's wrong? You're so nervous that you can't walk? As he spoke, he bent down and picked up Sun Xiaoxuan's waist. His originally unsteady steps suddenly became strong. I'll carry you out, it's not a big deal. Sun Xiaoxuan screamed, and before she could explain, she was lifted up by Qin like a baby. Her face suddenly turned red and this time she really felt weak. She wanted to explain something but she couldn't open her mouth. Outside, the people who had escaped from death gradually hid far away in the pitter-patter of rain. The slightly chilly breeze and raindrops gradually calmed their emotions. The tears on their faces mixed with the rainwater, and gradually they did not feel that they were crying anymore. Unconsciously, the experience of life and death together seemed to condense an invisible bond in the crowd, slowly bringing everyone together again. No one knew who reacted first, but he shouted, "That's right, where's our captain?" This shout was like a huge stone thrown into a small lake, and it violently caused ripples in the crowd. "That's right, the captain who saved everyone's life, Qin Guang? Why hasn't he come out yet? Did something happen to him in the cockpit? Everyone don't panic. Captain Qin will come out soon. He's too tired." The purser, who was watching Qin Guang walk over with Sun Xiaoxuan in his arms and left herself in the second-last position to adjust the air slide, heard the crowd's voices and shouted loudly. After she finished speaking, she leaped down. She was still halfway down when Qin Guang appeared at the door with Sun Xiaoxuan in his arms. His young face looked a bit tired, and his bald head was reflected by the falling rain. But at this moment, the image of him carrying the girl was so tall. The chief of Jiaodao Airport's publicity department, the only person present with the identity of a reporter, opened his single-lens reflex camera from afar and quickly focused. Then, with a click, he recorded this historical moment. The flash of the camera was like a signal light, and it made the crowd, which had temporarily quieted down when they saw Qin Guang appear, instantly boil over. Everyone raised their arms and shouted, "Our hero! Our hero! Hero Qin Guang!" Chapter 730. More than 300 passengers and flight attendants were not the only ones who welcomed their hero. Hundreds of medical staff temporarily transferred from nearby hospitals were also doing the same thing. These medical staff were originally ready for battle, thinking that there would be a lot of injured people. However, the most serious injury was just a person's scalp that was accidentally scratched. They were the only ones who did not do anything. Only the fire trucks were still busy. Strings of low-temperature foam were sprayed at the joint between the plane and the ground. The temperature dropped little by little, and the crisis was completely resolved. Standing at the top of the stairs, Qin Guang heard the cheers coming from afar. He looked up and saw many pairs of arms raised high at him. He was a little excited, but he just smiled faintly. Then he bent down and put Sun Xiaoxuan on the slide, and he himself slid down from the other side. When Qin Guang landed on the ground, he initially wanted to continue hugging Sun Xiaoxuan. However, Sun Xiaoxuan had already stood up and wouldn't allow Qin Guang to continue hugging her. With so many people watching, she felt embarrassed. "Come on, let's get out of here." Sun Xiaoxuan just took Qin Guang's hand and led him to the other people who had gathered in the distance to escape from death. When Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan got closer, the cheers and screams of the crowd involuntarily became louder and louder. The most emotional one was the music guy, who was a little unhappy with Richard Klaterman and Qin Guang on the plane. He rushed up with a red face and said, "Mr. Qin, thank you." As he said that, he stumbled and fell to the ground in front of Qin Guang. Qin Guang was so scared that he let go of Sun Xiaoxuan's hand. What a big gesture. The others were also shocked by this guy's performance. They thanked him sincerely, which was natural. But the culture of kneeling was not popular in China. "You are making it difficult for us. Besides, you're a young man. It's one thing for you to kneel, but we're old bosses and officials. We really can't kneel." However, Qin Guang immediately gave them a way out. He helped the music guy up and said, "Bro, I don't deserve such a big gift from you. Please get up, please get up. A man's knees are made of gold. Don't kneel to others so easily at such a young age. It's embarrassing." How could he explain that his foot had slipped? However, he reacted quickly and immediately thought of a way to save himself. Grabbing Qin Guang's hands, he turned around and shouted, "Everyone, let's do it together. Throw Mr. Qin up high." "All right." 10 seconds later, Qin Guang was lifted up by more than a dozen people. They tossed him into the air, caught him, and repeated the process. Everyone was in high spirits. In the drizzle, he was lifted, dropped, caught, raised, dropped, and caught. Among the crowd, there were men and women, old and young, but the only thing that didn't differ was that everyone was looking at Qin Guang in the sky with incomparable gratitude in their eyes. The airport publicity section chief hurriedly picked up the camera at the side. Kacha, he took a series of photos recording this scene under the rain. In the photo, Qin Guang was dancing in the air. His mouth was wide open and his face was full of smiles. Together with the people below who were raising their hands to catch him, it formed a beautiful picture. Sun Xiaoxuan, the cute girl, was standing to the side. She slightly raised her head to look at the man in the air. Even if she only occupied an extremely small area in the corner of the picture, and only had the side of her face, it still couldn't hide the infatuated worship in her eyes. When the news of everyone's safety was transmitted from Jiaodao Airport to China Airlines Command Center, the hundreds of staff here were boiling. Every time humanity triumphed over an air disaster, it was worth remembering. But these staff very quickly threw themselves into the next step of work. Aviation-related work was like this. The responsibility was greater than the heavens. They had to persevere day after day, year after year, to do every little thing well. Only then could they control the probability of a disaster to the lowest. The person in charge of the command center could rest a little. As the frontline leader of a related organization, when an accident occurred, he was fully deserving of being the first person in charge. The responsibility was great, but when everything was normal with his position, he didn't have to personally attend to everything. But he still decided to rush to Jiaodao Airport as soon as possible. After contacting Airbus and Pan Am, the three parties would work together to deal with the aftermath. He still needed to appear, and he also needed to coordinate the publicity work in the news report. Apart from that, he also needed to personally attend to matters such as commending Qin Guang, who had been ordered in the face of danger. Of course, this kind of forced landing that didn't develop into the worst situation didn't require him to personally appear. But considering that the other side was Qin Guang, the hot and fresh Guangdong General Bureau Chief, he believed that he needed to personally go out and take the opportunity to establish a friendship with the other side. Of course, before leaving, he still had to make a report to the elders. Dear leaders, thanks to Director Chen's efforts, Pan Am Flight DL199333 has made a smooth landing. Except for the original crew members and the two hijackers who died, all the other passengers and flight attendants escaped safely. No one was seriously injured. On the other side, the projection of the person in charge of Air China once again appeared in the Yanjing conference room. Facing the camera, his face was flushed, and he suppressed his excitement as he spoke one word at a time. Good, very good, very good. Qin Guang did a good job. You guys also did a good job. Everyone did a good job. Okay, you go deal with the aftermath. You don't need to report everything to us anymore. When the communication connection was disconnected, Old Jiang wiped the corner of his eyes without batting an eyelid and let out a long sigh. God really bless us. Old man Jean didn't say anything. Instead, he took a sip of tea with trembling hands and closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking, but his trembling hands betrayed his true feelings. The old man in the middle patted the table, signaling everyone to cheer up. God had mercy on Qin Guang. His communication with the internal force martial artist wouldn't be affected at all. I really don't know where that kid learned his skills. Although I've never flown a commercial plane before, and there are many differences between a commercial plane and a commercial plane, this kid really knows how to apply what he learned and solve this deadly situation. Unbelievable. At this time, an old man sitting in the corner exclaimed. This old man was one of the ace fighter pilots in Wuxia when he was young. We don't understand the young people nowadays. Old Jean finally spoke. He was implying something, and he patted old Jiang's shoulder as he spoke. Old Jiang looked a little embarrassed. Before, Jiang Yage told Qin Guang in front of everyone that as long as he could survive, she would be his. At that time, everyone just thought that Jiang Yage mentioned it casually to encourage Qin Guang. After all, everyone thought that he was going to die. But now he actually survived. According to Jiang Yage's character, since she said this, she must not be joking. She would take it seriously. But now, although Qin Guang and Jin Shiyue said that they had nothing to do with each other, Jin Shiyue had even confessed to Qin Guang in public. So, the relationship between the two old men suddenly became a little dirty. But just before, the old men had told Qin Guang that as long as he could survive, they wouldn't interfere in the affairs of the young people. He didn't say it clearly, but everyone understood what he meant and knew what he meant. But that was just a casual remark. They didn't expect him to survive. Did they really have to give their two precious granddaughters to Qin Guang? The more they thought about it, the more likely they felt that it was possible. Since Jiang Yage dared to say it, Jin Shiyue must have known about it. Maybe the two girls had reached some kind of terrible compromise. It was really scary to think about it. But could they go back on their word now? No. What kind of status do we have? How can we easily take back our words that have been spilled out? Besides, Qin Guang had a hard time escaping from death. Maybe he didn't even care about this problem. How could they take the initiative to mention it to him? Wouldn't it be a disgrace? What should they do this time? Forget it, so be it. The boat will cross the bridge when it comes to it. Maybe he's a good guy and won't have any extravagant hopes of two women sharing a husband? Maybe. The two old men looked at each other again and sighed. I'll look at this. Jiang Yage and Jean Shirihua didn't care about what the old men were thinking. The two sisters were already hugging each other crazily, cheering and screaming. Tears gushed out, but it couldn't wash away the ecstasy in their hearts. Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan let out long sighs of relief and slumped on the chairs. Little Miaowan, when the big chrysanthemum grows back, let's forcefully take some of its essence and deposit it in the bank? Little darling, you want to deposit it in the bank? There are banks that specialize in this. Okay. On this side, Qin Guang and the many passengers didn't make a ruckus for too long. Instead, they quickly moved to the Jiaodong City Hotel near Jiaodao for a short rest. At the same time, such a big thing had happened and too many people and things were involved. Adding on that, the result was positive and gratifying, and it was a Pan-Am flight, an international airline. Air China had a simple discussion and consulted the higher-ups. They decided to publicize it in a high profile and set an example. After obtaining permission from the higher-ups, countless reporters were like diligent ants, crazily flooding into Jiaodong City from Yanjing. The person in charge of the Air China Command Center personally led the team and was the first to board the nearest small passenger plane from Yanjing to Jiaodong City. Other than that, the staff of Pan Am and Airbus were also setting off and hurrying over. Although the plane crash had ended, it wasn't a collision between vehicles but a plane crash. Even if no passengers were injured, there was still a lot of aftermath work that needed to be done. The two hijackers and the sacrificed crew members also needed to be properly settled. Before all the other units, Wuxia's Central TV Channel 1 was the first to organize the relevant reports. At this time, the audience watching the Central TV Channel 1 variety show, Challenging the Impossible, first saw a line of notification on the bottom half of the screen. Hello audience friends. We will now broadcast an urgent piece of news. Please forgive the inconvenience. The original program will continue broadcasting in 10 minutes. Challenging was a high-quality variety show launched by the Central TV in the past 2 years. It was hosted by the popular host, Sibeli, and covered extreme challenges in many areas such as skills, stamina, and brain power. While the show showed the contestants challenging all kinds of impossible tasks and stories, it also focused on challenging oneself and understanding oneself. The show was a journey of exploration with humans as the target. It was an exploration of the potential of life, and a praise for ordinary life that surpassed themselves. It started from the most primitive bravery of humans. It showed people's courage and spirit to challenge themselves, and not just show their unique skills and limits. The domestic ratings of this show were not low. Although it was 10:30 on a Monday morning, the usual working and studying time, there were still many loyal viewers who were either on their shifts or secretly watching while going to work or going to school. The notification that suddenly popped up in front of everyone made everyone curse. I've been waiting so hard for a whole week just to watch a program and have some fun, and you're going to give me 10 minutes of other news for no reason? I was squatting in the classroom watching variety shows and you broadcast news for me? Animal. Bad review. Get lost. Change the channel. What's going on? Central TV Department 1 is also doing interruptions? What? It's so annoying. That's right. What unlucky news. Don't tell me it's the G22? Isn't that already over? Forget it. Anyway, it's very annoying. Change the channel. Wait, it looks like an air crash. Heavens. It can't be, right? As everyone was cursing and swearing, the image on the television changed. The first picture of this urgent news broadcast was taken by the chief of publicity at Jiaodao Airport. It was a chilling picture of the A330 leaving a trail of sparks behind it. But in an instant, everyone shut their mouths. An air crash was the most tragic disaster that could happen to human transportation. There was no need to say much. Just a picture was enough to shut everyone up. 5 seconds later, the picture was zoomed to the top right corner with a very simple PPT special effect. The news 30-minute studio layout that the audience was very familiar with appeared on the screen. Sitting in front of the television was an even more familiar face. It was the female host of News Simulcast, who could also be called the national talker. The female host's preparation seemed to be a bit rushed, but she was worthy of being a national talker. After approximately 2 seconds of awkward silence, she said with a solemn expression, "Half an hour ago, Pan Am DL 199333 made an emergency landing at Jiaodao Airport. This is a great forced landing, a miracle of life, and an unprecedented feat in the history of aviation. First of all, please allow me to express my sincerest respect to our hero Mr. Qin Guang. Please see the detailed report below. This report used a flashback method. After the national talker's image cut away, what followed was the footage taken by the surveillance cameras at Jiaodao Airport from a distance. Chapter 731. In the drizzle, the huge Airbus A330 swooped down from the sky with an ear-piercing screech, and then landed on the ground. The brakes madly braked, bringing up billowing smoke. Then the first set of brake tires burst, and the nose of the plane hit the ground and sparks flew everywhere. Then the second set of brake tires burst and more than half of the fuselage stuck to the ground, continuing to drag out more sparks, and crazily throwing out broken fuselage parts. In the camera, the fragmented shell of the plane dragged all the way. Finally, this behemoth finally stopped only a few dozen meters away from the end of the runway. Even because the surveillance camera was shooting from the rear, it gave people the illusion that the plane had already rushed out of the runway. Thick smoke continued to rise from under the plane, and the fire trucks quickly gathered. Before they got close, water columns and fire-extinguishing foam had already been madly sprayed. The ambulance followed closely behind the fire trucks on standby. This scene was like the scene of a disaster movie. Without waiting for the national mouthpiece to explain, the millions of viewers in front of the TV immediately understood that this was really a terrible accident. Wait, just now the national mouthpiece first said it was a forced landing, what miracle, what heroic feat, and then said to thank the hero? TSK, we all know the usual routine of the official mouthpiece, they can also make a funeral a happy event. Truly shameless to the extreme. It was obviously an accident, but they can forcibly say it was a forced landing. Are they trying to create a model and boast about heroes? Today we people have become smarter, we won't be fooled. But then the special news that reached 10 minutes long made everyone clearly understand one thing. This time it was really not a funeral but a real heroic legend. Next, the news moved the time to before the hijacking. First, it briefly introduced the crew of Flight DL199333 and the flight information. Then the screen showed the cockpit surveillance video provided by Pan Am, the tragic gunfight, and the arrogant shouting of the robbers. Then the brave captain fought with all his might and perished together with the criminals. Then the news briefly introduced another accident because the crew was shot, then the plane went into an unmanned state and finally crashed into the sea, no one on board survived. At this time, people finally realized the seriousness of the problem. What happened next completely subverted everyone's outlook on life and the world. Chen Guang appeared in the cockpit. Some viewers knew Chen Guang, and as soon as he appeared, they saw his name. Isn't that brother omnipotent? Why is he on this plane? Isn't this too unlucky? The news broadcast on the television was still going on. Chen Guang first used an unimaginable method to find the bomb that the terrorists had hidden in the plane in the cargo hold. This was the first time the crisis was resolved for the plane. But their luck is very bad. At this time, the plane is still flying towards the terrorist base, and at this time, Mr. Chen has not come into contact with controlling the plane at all. Since there was no other experienced pilot on the plane, he took over the heavy responsibility without hesitation. On the screen was a short video of the purser explaining some equipment to Chen Guang. After that, the plane unfortunately encountered clear air turbulence, which is a very terrifying weather phenomenon. The right wing engine was damaged and it caught fire and exploded, causing a fuel leak. The plane was in a precarious situation. Hey, we don't need you to tell us that it's dangerous. The plane only had 2 engines to begin with. How could one of them not be dangerous? It was still leaking oil. Damn, the plane was flying in the sky and still leaking oil. It was practically exploding on the spot, okay? However, in the face of this sudden change, the Chen Guang on the screen was very calm and very calm. Flying with a single engine was not as impossible as imagined. Through reasonable power distribution and adjusting the tail, the plane could still maintain stability at high speed. A large plane was not as fragile as imagined. However, Chen Guang was even more stable. In the face of this crisis, he did not panic. He still worked very hard to crazily absorb even the slightest bit of aviation knowledge. Even though he was so tired that he was yawning crazily, he still tried his best to persevere. For a person who had never come into contact with aircraft piloting, it was too difficult for him to pilot a large civil aircraft like the Airbus A330, which only had 1 engine and had to be in full manual mode during an emergency landing. This was not the worst part. When they heard that the plane had to make an emergency landing through thunderstorms because of a lack of fuel, people's mouths opened wide. At this time, how many people remembered that they were watching Challenging the Impossible just now? For the person on DL199333, to survive was to challenge the impossible, okay? But then people saw something even more incredible. Brother All-Rounder, who said that he did not know how to fly the plane, suddenly started it. They saw him jump left and right in the captain's seat and the co-pilot's seat. His operating movements were incredibly fast. Those who did not understand aircraft piloting would only feel that his movements in the surveillance video were amazing. Those who understood a little would understand how amazing his performance was at this time. What a terrifying learning ability. One person seemed to be in a hurry to control 3 people, but in fact, every one of his decisions was perfect. The data in the black box had been partially transferred out. The experts interpreted that during the entire process of the emergency landing, he dealt with a total of 198 abnormal information provided by the central monitoring system. But he never made mistakes and he could make the most correct response every time. But this was not the most terrifying thing. What was even more terrifying was that his decision-making time never exceeded 2 seconds. It was as if he did not need to think at all to find the key to the problem, which even the most professional veteran pilots could not do. In addition, he made a total of more than 500 micro-adjustments to the various parameters of the plane throughout the entire process, but he never made a mistake. Every micro-adjustment increased the chance of survival by 1 point. Especially when passing through thunderstorms, his series of dazzling and complicated operations could be called a civil aviation textbook. Alignment of the runway before landing was also a big problem. But when the aircraft's steering performance was impaired, his mysterious precise steering operation of the glider was even more accurate than autopilot. His mysterious forced landing at 154 knots was an unsolved mystery. How did he calculate in his mind, and how could he predict everything so accurately? How did he know that he could land at 154 knots at the end of the runway? What was the basis of his calculation? All these signs pointed to one thing. In less than 2 hours, all-rounder Chen Guang evolved from a complete novice to an incredible god-level pilot. The entire news broadcast was 10 minutes long, of which at least 7 minutes were focused on Chen Guang, interpreting his mysterious rapid evolution from all angles. The last scene stopped at the moment when the plane was taxiing on the runway and he shouted, "How can I leave?" No one knew who Chen Guang was talking to at that time, and the news broadcast did not clearly explain. Lastly, let us thank Chen Guang once again. We would like to thank Captain Frank, who sacrificed his life to fight with the criminals. We would also like to thank the crew of DL199333, as well as the staff of the Air Traffic Control Center. It is because of your efforts that 300 lives were saved. You are heroes. More detailed reports and press conferences will be broadcast in the next few days. After this news broadcast ended, the screen of The Impossible Challenge reappeared in front of the TV. But although these loyal viewers of The Impossible Challenge were watching the TV and listening to the shouting and roaring of the contestants, the program that they were watching with relish suddenly became dull. Compared to Chen Guang, what these contestants in The Impossible Challenge did was simply child's play. Chen Guang was like this, grinding a gun at the last minute to become a god-level pilot, 1 against 3 turning the tide. This was the real The Impossible Challenge. Maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe it was the arrangement of fate, but the emergency news about the crash landing of Flight DL199333 happened to be broadcast in The Impossible Challenge. Comparing the two, it maximized the effect of this sudden news broadcast. Many people were still thinking about Chen Guang's words. Why did he suddenly shout, "How can I leave," without rhyme or reason? Oh yes, it must be that he was mentally and physically exhausted at that time, and he was on the verge of fainting. He was actually talking to himself. He was using his will to overcome himself and surpass his limits. What a great person. So sometimes overinterpretation was a very unpredictable thing. In fact, Chen Guang was talking to Lioli, but no one knew. Instead, it made people imagine and analyze things in a different direction, forcing his image to become even greater. Chen Guang was lying in the hotel room watching TV and smacking his lips. As expected of Central TV, their efficiency is really high. It's only been 20 minutes or so, and they made it look like a documentary. Actually, I'm not so tired that I'm yawning and forcing myself to study. I'm really asleep. In fact, he complained a lot throughout the whole process, which was not suitable for children. However, the relevant staff of Central TV had also received a hint from someone and only kept some of the more positive scenes in the entire news broadcast. Just the old master's ridicule alone was quickly ignored. "Chen Guang, why aren't you asleep yet?" At this moment, Sun Xiaoshuan came in without knocking on the door with a bowl of hot soup. "You should rest well." Chen Guang shook his head. "What rest? I'm not that weak." By the way, I'll get someone to buy a flight ticket from Jiaodong to Yanjing. I have to leave tonight at the latest. You're still taking a plane? Do you have to leave in such a hurry? Sun Xiaoxuan was a little scared. Qin Guang saw her like this and smiled. What are you afraid of? We've already survived such a bad situation. Can it be any worse? I really have to leave now. Don't I have to play the piano at the National Museum of Art the day after tomorrow? I can't delay it. I have to go. But someone just came to inform us. They especially wanted me to tell you that they hope you can attend the press conference tomorrow at this hotel. Qin Guang curled his lips. I'm not going. I don't have time to sing praises. I'm busy. You're really not going? Qin Guang nodded resolutely. I won't go even if you beat me to death. My time is precious. 10 minutes later, he changed his mind because he heard that this press conference would be broadcast live all over the country and even the world. There was no doubt that it would attract a lot of attention. It would be a pity to waste such a good opportunity to promote himself. The most important thing was that since it was a live broadcast, he would definitely be interviewed. He couldn't control his words. Chapter 732. Other than that, what prompted him to change his decision was that he would be able to meet the relevant person in charge of Pan Am at the press conference, as well as Captain Frank's family. Since he had said he would take care of Captain Frank's daughter, Elsa, he had to do it. For him, money wasn't a problem. To be able to escape successfully besides his own hard work, he also had to thank Captain Frank's final desperate struggle. Without him opening the cockpit door, even if he had 1,000 abilities, he wouldn't have been able to use them. That night, a more detailed report on the forced landing came out. This time, Central TV Department 1 simply did a half-hour-long special report. The investigation into the cause of the accident and the hijackers was still in progress and had yet to reach a conclusion. Therefore, the special report still focused on Qin Guang, but at the same time, it also explained in more detail the bravery and fearlessness of the original flight crew in their fight with the hijackers. However, the impact of this incident on the internet wasn't limited to just Central TV. As early as the first emergency news broadcast in the morning, this incident had gradually become a hot topic on the internet. Whether it was domestically or internationally, the attention paid to the plane accident was already extremely high. Moreover, this accident was mixed with a terrorist attack, a savior hero who had appeared out of nowhere, and other hot topics. Several photos taken by the publicity section chief of Jiaodao Airport appeared on the internet after receiving permission from the relevant departments. Among them, 3 were the most popular. They were the one of the plane dragging sparks as it rushed forward on the runway, the one of Qin Guang holding Sun Xiaoxuan and standing at the escape exit, and the one of Qin Guang being thrown into the air by the crowd. These 3 photos, whether it was the lighting or the angle of the shot, or even the people and objects in the shot, perfectly matched the metaphysical beauty of photography and were extremely representative. The limelight and craze on the internet soared to the sky. An omnipotent Superman, Qin Guang's name once again shot to the sky. He really was omnipotent. He knew everything. Or rather, even if he didn't know some things before, as long as it was necessary, he could learn and apply it on the spot, and he could do better than anyone else. For example, Qin Guang's own Weibo, under the control of the staff of Qinguang Agency, had reposted the photo report posted by the official Weibo account of Central TV News. Under this Weibo post, in addition to the busybodies and fans who came on a pilgrimage, there were also some teachers and students in the field of aviation. I'm a senior lecturer at Southwest Aviation Academy. I have 20,000 hours of safe flight time. From my professional point of view, I can tell you that what Mr. Qin has done is unprecedented in the history of civil aviation. Aside from the fact that he was a beginner, the A330 was a modern large commercial airliner. Even with a complete automatic control system, it still required at least 2 people to operate it. After switching to manual mode, it was almost impossible to be as precise as Mr. Chen's. I admire him very much. I can even say that as a retired civil aviation pilot and a 60-year-old astronaut, I worship him. That's Professor He upstairs. I'm a level 17 freshman, and I also think that Brother All-Rounder is simply too strong. I am a retired fighter pilot and I completely agree with Professor He. Mr. Chen's flying skills and piloting skills are outstanding even on a fighter jet. I want to become a pilot. Recently, I no longer worship Brother Chun but Brother Guang. All-Rounder Qin Guang is invincible. I told you a long time ago that Brother All-Rounder is invincible. Anyway, I'm his die-hard fan. Unlike previous Weibo posts, this time, Qin Guang's Weibo post was full of positive comments. There was not a single negative comment. It couldn't be helped. At least there was no negative comment on this matter. If they continued to criticize him at this time, they would be going against everyone and against morality. This incident also shut up the people who criticized him a few days ago about the movie incident. On the other hand, the new fans attracted by the arm wrestling competition were overjoyed. A new question gradually appeared in everyone's mind. Was there anything in this world that Brother All-Rounder couldn't do? Many of the negative comments and haters who were attracted by the movie also began to panic. Could it be that the rumors were wrong? That Brother All-Rounder was actually a good actor? That couldn't be, right? Wasn't that too much of a scam? A lot of people touched their faces nervously. They had an ominous feeling. When Women was released, would their faces be slapped swollen by him from a distance? Perhaps it was because Qin Guang had attracted too much attention on the internet and in the public eye recently, but no matter what, Central TV Department 1 Special News had achieved an unprecedented high viewership rating in recent years. It was even higher than the viewership ratings for the season finale of Empresses in the Palace and Langya List, which had been very popular recently. Many people even put down their games and waited in front of the TV at 9:30 p.m. just to watch this special report. They saw another epic forced landing, an unprecedented hero in the history of aviation. Of course, the entire report was not full of highlights. There were still some negatives. Perhaps it was a mistake by the Central TV staff, or perhaps they deliberately wanted to highlight Qin Guang's bravery and calmness, but they cut out the part where he sang at the last moment. Well, thank God there were still some things that this guy didn't know. Judging from his out-of-tune and foreign singing voice, there was no doubt that he was the singer of souls, a Naga siren from hell. Fortunately, if he was also a singing god, then the world would be too unfair. You're so cute. Hearing the terrible singing coming from the TV, Sun Xiaoxuan, who was sitting with Chen Guang in front of the TV, covered his mouth and laughed. Damn, how could I sing at that time? I must have been controlled by some evil force. I have no memory of it at all. Qin Guang also blushed. This leader of the TV station was really poisonous. Wasn't he smearing his great image? Fortunately, the TV station couldn't post comments, or else they would be flooding over. We're on the same side, please don't sing. Brother All-Rounder, if you don't sing we can still be friends. Soul Singer All-Rounder, singing doesn't need money, only life. I'll give you Buddha jumps over the wall, please don't sing. At 10 o'clock the next morning in the most luxurious hotel in Jiaodong City, hundreds of reporters from all over the world gathered together. Although the investigation of the plane accident could not produce too many results in just one day, they could directly interview the godlike Captain Qin Guang at this press conference, which still made all the reporters scramble. As for other ordinary passengers, they were questioned by the accident investigation team one after another yesterday, but these passengers were not very clear about the situation before and after the accident. Only the first-class passengers knew that there had been a fierce exchange of fire in the cockpit before the hijacking, and then some passengers helped the flight attendants clean up the mess. The information that the accident investigation team could learn from the ordinary passengers was more or less the same. As for the compensation for the accident, this was something that the airline needed to deal with slowly afterward. After all, it was impossible for the airline to bear no responsibility for letting terrorists sneak into the crew and bring weapons onto the plane. In other words, if the plane had not been diverted after being hijacked, the plane would not have encountered the clear air turbulence that caused damage to the right-wing engine, and naturally the subsequent series of events would not have happened. At 10 o'clock the next morning, the press conference was held on time. The entire press conference first took about an hour to explain the latest progress of the accident investigation. The experts had further investigated the black box and the plane's monitoring equipment and reached the latest conclusions. In fact, the content was similar to last night's special report, but this time it was spoken by a person, and the matter was explained more comprehensively. Qin Guang's performance yesterday, which had even dazzled the eyes of professional pilots, was now being interpreted in more ways. On the surface, this was just a forced landing completed by manual operation. All of Qin Guang's operations in this process were open and transparent, and the electronic equipment accurately recorded his every move. Machines would not lie, would not deceive people, and would not forget anything that should not be forgotten. Therefore, although ordinary people could not see Qin Guang's series of operations, it was completely open and important reference information in the aviation industry. Humans also used this method to work together to push forward aviation safety step by step. In just one day, his operation records had appeared in front of almost all relevant technical personnel and experts who were interested in participating in aviation safety construction around the world. More and more people were involved in interpreting his operation records, trying to crack his methods, and even trying to sort out new aviation operating standards from his manual operation records and compile them into manuals. But the incredible happened. People could not understand his operation. Saving the air disaster was not accomplished overnight, but it was a series of countless operations that were linked together. Any mistake in the middle, any parameter adjustment that was too large or too small, could lead to irreversible consequences. In particular, there were multiple factors such as operating with a single engine oil leakage, passing through thunderstorms and operating alone, which made it even more dangerous. But Qin Guang did it. At first, the members of the Aviation Association could hardly believe that he had no piloting experience, but a lot of Qin Guang's information was open to the public, and they did not need to investigate too much to know that he had never touched the control panel of an aircraft. The most frightening thing was that he was not a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Every step of his operation seemed to be extremely rushed and random, but when these steps and links were combined, the final result was a near-perfect forced landing. The landing seemed thrilling, but the result seemed to be perfect. He even said in advance that he would stop at 2,950 meters and that 6 tires would explode. This was too monstrous. It was difficult to understand, but he had already become an established fact. Therefore, his dazzling series of random presses, whether they did not understand or doubted it, must have been reasonable in his heart. Aviation safety was only judged by the result. He succeeded, so his operation must have been reasonable, and it could be said to be correct in a sense, and it should also have reference value. But we can't understand it. Breaking down to every step, we all understand. It was nothing more than adjusting the amplitude of the tail, increasing the air pressure, increasing or decreasing the power output, opening or closing the flaps, increasing the hydraulic pressure and other basic operations. But how could these small operations, when linked together, form the most perfect result? The experts and scholars could not understand, and even the most experienced pilots could not understand. His series of operations was simply like a bottomless pit. The more people tried to decipher it, the more unfathomable they felt, as if every step of his was full of deep meaning. How did he do it? What was the basis for his actions? How did he judge? One question after another appeared in the minds of all the technicians. There were only 2 possibilities. Either he was really a person blessed by the gods with incredible luck, and he could save the plane by messing around. Either that, or his flying skills had already surpassed everyone's knowledge and reached a whole new level. How they wanted to stand in front of him and ask him personally, how did he do it? Those who were able to arrive in time today sat in the relatively front seats of the press conference, as well as those from China's domestic airlines. Although many leaders had told them in advance not to ask too complicated questions about Qin Guang, they had to help maintain his image. But these experts and technicians still felt uncomfortable. Why was the explanation of the accident not over yet? Why hadn't Qin Guang come out yet? We are so anxious. The reporters were actually in a similar state of mind. They could listen to the explanation of the accident at any time, but the person they wanted to interview the most was Qin Guang. Hurry up and let him come out. Those who were watching the live broadcast in front of the TV were thinking the same thing. No matter how urgent the situation was, it was still safe and sound. The dangerous situation they were talking about sounded scary, but we didn't really understand it. We just wanted to see Qin Guang. Finally, the host of the press conference stood on the stage again and said with a smile, "Seeing that everyone seems to be impatient, I won't waste everyone's time. Next, we will directly invite our hero, Qin Guang." The applause was thunderous. Whether it was the reporters or the technicians, they all clapped until their palms turned red. Qin Guang, who looked quite energetic after being pressed down on the chair by Sun Xiaoxuan, was now standing backstage. When you go up later, don't be nervous. No, don't even think about whether you are nervous or not. Just smile. If someone asks you a question you don't understand, just play dumb. If you really can't answer, just say that you have no comment. Sun Xiaoxuan wasn't qualified to go up, but Qin Guang was going up. She was even more nervous than Qin Guang. She said she was telling him what to pay attention to, but in fact, her voice was trembling. Qin Guang was amused by her silly and cute look. He patted her head and said, "What are you thinking about? This is just a small scene." He smiled and stepped out of the backstage. The applause outside was even more enthusiastic. "Mr. Qin, please say a few words to everyone," the host said as he handed the microphone to Qin Guang. He took the microphone and coughed twice. Then the audience gradually quieted down. Qin Guang raised his head and looked straight at the camera. There wasn't a smile on his face. He knew that there were at least millions of eyes watching him from all over the world. Chapter 733. In fact, he had wanted to show off, but he had just met Frank's family backstage. Elsa was a fat girl in high school in the United States. She and her family had only arrived less than an hour ago. They didn't even have time to look at Captain Frank's body before they were pulled over by the vice president of Pan Am Airlines, who claimed that it was a positive publicity. Her mother was a typical American woman. She was a little fat, but she was also very strong. She had been holding Elsa, who was crying, and patting her head to comfort her. Qin Guang had immediately scolded the vice president. How could you be so unreasonable? They had flown thousands of miles here to take care of their family's funeral arrangements. They hadn't even seen the body yet. Who would be in the mood to sing your praises? At that time, Qin Guang had donated $100,000 to Frank's wife and daughter. He had entrusted Tang Xiaokai to transfer the money in the United States. The vice president of Pan Am had also asked the driver to send them to the funeral home. Therefore, Qin Guang, who was standing in front of the camera, wasn't very happy. Hello everyone, I am Qin Guang. Then he forced a smile on his face. There was another round of applause. Just now the host asked me to say something. I think they wanted me to brag about my contribution to this incident in a heroic tone. But what I want to say is that the real hero isn't me. I just did what I could. The so-called saving people was actually more because I didn't want to die. Looking at the results, I did save everyone's lives. But I can't deny that if there was a parachute in the plane, I would have run away alone. So, I really can't bear the title of hero. There was an uproar in the audience. Who would say that about themselves? You should take all the praise that was given to you. How do you want us to go back and write a script? Who would say that they would run away if there was a parachute when they saw that they were already a hero? The audience in front of the TV was even more confused. Why are you being so humble? Even if you say you are not in the mood to talk, don't want to talk, and don't want to talk, you are still a worthy hero. What do you want to say? Qin Guang did not pay attention to the conference room that was getting out of control. Instead he continued. It might sound unbelievable, but it's the truth. Even if I hadn't seen the cockpit of a plane before it happened, it doesn't matter. I'm not a hero, but I'm a genius. I did learn how to fly a plane in 2 hours with the help of the purser and the air traffic control center. I memorized the name of every piece of equipment they mentioned as well as all the key points of operation. Other than that, it's in my head. As he spoke, he pointed at his own head. I formed the entire plane into a whole. So, even if they only mentioned it briefly but didn't go into detail, I've completed it myself and created a complete plane in my mind. Maybe some people will think I'm bragging, but I don't care. How can I be so arrogant? How can someone shamelessly call themselves a genius? But that was the truth. I knew I could do it and I really did it. What might be a fantasy to others is a piece of cake to me. That's why I said I'm not a hero. I just did what I could. It was within my capabilities, so it wasn't difficult. I call my ability the meditation learning method. I don't know if others can do it, and I can't describe this mysterious feeling. Maybe it's my personal talent. Yes, that's right. I'm bragging again. After saying that, he forced a smile and spoke in a joking tone. When the reporters heard this, they didn't quite understand how impressive it was. However, the experts and scholars sitting in the front row, as well as the people in the aviation industry watching the live broadcast in front of the TV, were all shocked. Qin Guang answered the questions in their hearts. He really learned it. He couldn't possibly brag about this because it would be too easy to expose it. What a terrifying genius. His meditation learning method was simply nature-defying. I also know that many of the experts here want to ask me how I made many decisions at that time. It's okay. Regarding this matter, regarding the more than 500 operations that you've calculated, I'll write a more detailed explanation in a few days. I won't go into detail today. When the people in the aviation industry heard this, they were a little disappointed, but more than that, they were pleasantly surprised. What I want to talk about today is someone else. The real hero isn't me, it's Captain Frank. If he hadn't died with the criminals and opened the cockpit, I wouldn't have been able to do it even if I had 10,000 skills. We might not have died in the plane crash, but we would have been taken to the terrorist organization's base. Of course, we might still have encountered clear sky turbulence. Who knows? So, the real hero is Captain Frank and the other 2 crew members. I really don't deserve it. Okay, I'm done. After saying that, Qin Guang turned around and was about to leave. Wait, Mr. Chin, please wait. The Pan Am vice president quickly came over. He held another microphone in his hand and said quickly, "It's not over yet." Without waiting for Qin Guang to speak, he immediately took out a box and opened it. Inside was a dazzling golden medal. "Mr. Chin, this is the Hero Medal jointly awarded by the International Airline Federation. It is only awarded to heroes who have made significant contributions to the aviation industry. Although you've been modest, there is no doubt that in this accident, you have indeed saved the lives of 300 passengers and staff, as well as the reputation of Pan Am. Therefore, please accept the Hero Medal that represents our highest respect." Under the lens of hundreds of reporters, the Pan Am vice president handed the golden medal to Qin Guang with both hands. He had a very attentive smile on his face. Qin Guang looked at the medal-like thing in front of him. He didn't really want it. What kind of person is this old man? You actually dare to fool me with a gold-plated medal? The Pan Am vice president's hand was a little stiff. Well, Mr. Chin, every holder of the Hero Medal is a lifetime honorary VIP of major airlines in the world. Every year, they can enjoy free first-class tickets from major airlines in the alliance for an unlimited number of times. Currently, including you, you are the 9th holder of this medal in the world. The old man's face was still smiling, but his heart was screaming. Brother, hurry up and take it. It's so heavy. The flashbulbs flashed wildly. It's so dazzling. I'm so embarrassed. Qin Guang's eyes lit up. Free first-class tickets? Unlimited number of times? I can have that. He finally reached out his hand. Thank you, thank you. I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it. Although he said he didn't deserve it, his hands didn't slow down. The moment he took the medal, the camera flashed again. The old man's eyes were as big as a cow's, but he quickly maintained his smile. This photo was likely to be published in Time magazine. He still had to pay attention to his image. Bro, are you poisonous? You keep taking pictures of my eyes. Are you trying to stuff the lens into my nostrils? Finally, the photo was taken. The Pan Am vice president and the person in charge of China went up to say a few words. This time, the Pan Am vice president remembered. In front of everyone, he patted his chest and said that he wouldn't mistreat the families of Captain Frank and the other crew members. He also said that Qin Guang had just donated $100,000 backstage. The audience and reporters in front of the TV also applauded. As for Qin Guang's fans, they were even more touched. This was true sentiment. He wasn't a hero, but he was a true hero. When other people donated, they would want the whole world to know. Look at our brother all-rounder. He donated backstage without saying a word and didn't even say anything. If it wasn't for the tactful boss pointing it out, he might have really done a good deed without leaving his name. Such a brother all-rounder, we fans are righteous. Next, it was time for the reporters to interview. Qin Guang's mood improved. After all, the dead were gone, and the living couldn't be immersed in sadness. Qin Guang didn't have much of a relationship with Captain Frank. He had done what he needed to do. He donated to ensure the livelihood of his family. $100,000 was enough for Elsa to graduate from university and help him leave his name. Good. He collected his emotions and prepared to give the guys who were interviewing him a surprise. What were your thoughts before the plane landed? The first reporter who rushed up asked a very boring question. A normal person would have answered that it was for responsibility, for the sake of survival, for the sake of 300 lives and so on. But who was he facing? It was the unreasonable Master Guang. He rolled his eyes. What was I thinking? I had no thoughts. My mind was completely blank. Have you heard of meditation? Epiphany? It was such a magical state. My whole body was empty, and countless numbers flashed through my mind like lightning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was as though I was wandering in a sea of data. I seemed to have transformed into a calculator just like in the Matrix. Then I raised my hand and grabbed a number. The tail wing rotated by 0.5 degrees. That's right, just like that. I completely turned myself into a machine. That's why I could perform so perfectly, jumping between two positions without making any mistakes. I didn't have any distracting thoughts at all. I even forgot who I was. Qin Guang didn't call this art. This was called the art of saying things to the point. The reporters widened their eyes and couldn't say anything for a long time. Bro, this is a very serious and global press conference. You're telling this story like it's in a fantasy novel. Why aren't you playing by the rules at all? You must be messing with us, right? That wasn't the end. He was worried that his international friends wouldn't understand, and he was also worried that the overseas broadcast would edit out his words. It was also possible that the guy who translated at the same time was scared silly. He switched to English and repeated it himself. You even brought your own translator. The first reporter retreated in defeat and was replaced by the next. Brother all-rounder, how did you do it back then? I still find it hard to believe. Qin Guang shrugged. Don't ask me. I don't know how I did it either. But it wasn't difficult. It really wasn't difficult. It was very easy and casual, like drinking soup. Have you seen my other competition videos? As long as I want to learn something, I can easily learn it to the extreme. If you still don't believe me, you can follow my Weibo when you go back. Search for all-rounder. The first one that pops up with 21 million followers is me. It has all my personal videos. I'm honest with you. Mr. Qin, your Weibo followers are almost 25 million now. Is that so? I haven't really looked at my Weibo recently. I've been too busy. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never admit that he had handed over his Weibo account to someone else. The second reporter also retreated in defeat. The third reporter rushed forward. Mr. Qin, have you ever thought that if the forced landing failed? No, I have never thought about it. In my life dictionary there is no such thing as failure. The third reporter retreated. The fourth. Mr. Qin, in such a critical moment, who are you thinking about? No one. I'm just afraid of death. I don't want to die. I want to live. On the other side, Air China's representative and Pan Am's vice president were also shocked by this guy's unscientific way of answering questions. When other celebrities answered reporters' questions, it was because they didn't want to say anything. They were afraid that they would accidentally step into a trap and get taken out of context, causing trouble. You, on the other hand, can't wait to write a web novel on the spot. It's like telling a story. When reporters interview others, they have to work hard to pick out the words from their words. You really don't need to pick out the words. Every word you say is a scoop. The reporters all said that there was too much information for them to criticize. Today's questions will end here. Mr. Qin is a little tired. Before the departure, Air China's representative received orders from the elders to help Qin Guang establish a heroic image. But you're tearing down your own stage. I'm so tired. So he decided to let the press conference end quickly. Luckily, those experts heard that Qin Guang was going to write a detailed analysis and didn't ask any professional questions. It was just right to end it now. But how could Qin Guang do that? He still had the most important sentence to say. Wait. Let me answer one last question. Qin Guang silently pushed away Air China's representative, who was trying to drag him away, as he tightly held onto the microphone. All right. Then this question will be asked by CCTV's old Qin. Air China's representative personally picked a veteran reporter. This person was famous for his moral values. He would definitely be able to control the situation and not give Qin Guang a chance to perform. Mr. Qin, then, although you are very humble in my heart, you are a hero who turned the tide. We have also seen that you have already achieved extraordinary achievements in many areas. As a role model for today's youth, do you have anything to say to today's youth? Air China's representative secretly gave reporter Old Qin a thumbs up. As expected, his moral values were correct. These words were too appropriate. He didn't believe that Qin Guang could still come up with any more tricks. Qin Guang was also stunned. He hesitated for 3 seconds. It was a bit difficult to draw from this question. Or should I just do a super strong twist? Alright, I can only do this? Of course. It's very important. I have a very important piece of advice. It's very precious. Everyone immediately sat up straight. Even the other reporters, who were disappointed that they couldn't ask any questions, nervously clenched the recording pens in their hands. My advice to young people is that I welcome everyone to my concert. Tomorrow night at 8, we will meet at Yanjing's National Gallery of Art. If you can't come to support me, please log onto the Tomato channel and broadcast it live. The webcast will be broadcast live on Bamboo and YouTube platforms. Log onto Qin Guang's concert and don't change the channel. Old Qin was dumbfounded. What happened to the advice? I just wanted you to say something inspiring. Why did you advertise yourself? Air China's representative slapped his forehead. He didn't know why, but he wanted to strangle him. As a result, tens of millions of viewers around the world were forcefully ambushed by him in the stiffest and most rigid public advertisement in history. Chapter 734. Thank you everyone for attending today's press conference. The next step of the accident investigation will be continuously updated on the aviation safety website. We welcome everyone's supervision. We will cooperate with the investigation company, Pan Am, and Airbus to produce a complete accident report as soon as possible. Aviation safety is the lifelong pursuit of all of us. We will treat every accident with the most serious and rigorous attitude. Whether it was a successful forced landing or a failed forced landing, it will be a warning bell ringing above our heads. In short, thank you everyone. The China Airlines representative finally couldn't sit still anymore. He snatched the microphone from Qin Guang and spoke like a machine gun. After that, he passed the microphone to the Pan Am vice president and then moved closer to Qin Guang's ear. My grandpa Qin, that's enough, it's really enough. Let's go? Please spare me. How am I going to explain this to the higher-ups when I get back? Explain? Explain what? Qin Guang didn't continue making a fuss. His goal had been achieved. Looking at his performance, it was already past 1 in the afternoon. After eating, he could catch a 2 o'clock flight to Yanjing. The higher-ups said that this time, you've done a great service, a real great service. They want me to cooperate with you and make your image as positive as possible. You're like this, I really feel like I can't do anything. The China Airlines representative ultimately sold out the elders. Qin Guang smiled and patted the uncle's shoulder with more maturity. No. I never wanted to deliberately create a positive image. How I am, I let others see me as I am. Wearing a mask and acting, doing one thing in front of others and another behind others, this kind of life is too tiring. Also, the netizens these days are really smart. What people do, the heavens are watching. Whether or not my image is positive, everyone has their own opinion. Blindly packaging will only backfire. If you want me to be like those leaders and say dignified words, it's not that I can't, but that I don't want to. Don't worry, there won't be any problems with what I said today. After Qin Guang finished speaking, he patted the man's shoulder again and went backstage to the airport with Sun Xiaoxuan. The China Airlines representative stood there in a daze for a long time, not believing Qin Guang's words. But he couldn't refute it. When Qin Guang patted his shoulder in a very mature manner, he almost thought that Qin Guang was his elder. But after waiting for an hour or so, he finally cooperated with several parties to completely end the press conference, and his secretary sent back the online feedback to him. Admittedly, some people felt that Qin Guang was acting too casually on such a serious occasion. However, these doubters were soon scolded to the point where they couldn't tell north from south. The reason was simple. No matter how much trouble he caused at the press conference, he was the one who stood up bravely at the moment of life and death and turned the tide. No matter how beautiful his words were, it was useless. Qin Guang did the right thing. No matter how much he pushed the credit to Captain Frank, everyone knew that he was the real hero. As for his seemingly nonsensical explanations such as the Matrix and everything being ethereal, perhaps what he said was true. Otherwise, how could he explain that he could do the work of 3 people? He might seem to be acting cute, but he was actually speaking the truth. Also, he said he was a genius? That's right, we all think so too. We have been his fans for several months. Really, we have never seen him lose. Advertising himself at this serious press conference? Why not? If it wasn't for him, this wouldn't be a press conference. This would be a memorial service. You say he doesn't respect the dead? Have you ever seen someone who doesn't respect the dead? It was fine if he gave his credit to others, but he actually secretly donated $100,000. That was $100,000, equivalent to 600,000 renminbi in cash. Did he have the obligation to donate? No, not at all. But he had already done it first and he didn't even think of showing it off. He even gave it to others. He didn't do it with words. He did it to show his respect to Captain Frank. You keyboard warriors on the internet, if you have the ability, why don't you donate too? A true hero can be willful and has the right to be willful. So the worries of the China Airlines representative were completely unnecessary. Qin Guang's performance at the press conference not only did not bring him bad publicity, but it was also praised on the internet. It even made many people feel that this person was very real, very down-to-earth. He was not a fictional character living on TV, but a super down-to-earth and super down-to-earth civilian hero. A hero doesn't have to be like a saint, flaunting himself to be dazzling. A hero is also a human, and we like this kind of all-rounder bro. Not convinced? Not convinced. Of course, there were also the older generation who felt that Qin Guang's performance was a little too undignified. They felt that this kid couldn't achieve greatness and was not steady enough. They used their one-finger zen to attack Qin Guang's performance on their personal Weibo. But the times belong to the young, and the internet also belonged to the young. Not long after, these old men were tearing up from the scolding of these young men. They closed their Weibo accounts and comments. The most pitiful old man even fainted on the spot from anger. Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan were accompanied by a few China Airlines staff and waited in the VIP area of the airport. There was still half an hour before the plane took off. Actually, Sun Xiaoxuan was a little afraid of flying at this time, but Qin Guang was in a hurry to go to Beijing, and she really didn't want to take the train alone. So she mustered up her courage and followed. "Oh right, Qin Guang, are you going back to school after playing the piano? School starts on the 1st. You still have to take makeup exams, right?" Sun Xiaoxuan moved her head beside Qin Guang and looked at the comments on Weibo with him. Qin Guang thought about it. The cultivation pills One gave him had been used up recently, and he was almost out. There was no conclusion to the matter with the martial artists, and it was hard for him to let it go. Recently, the production of his faith value had skyrocketed. He might as well stay in Yanjing and be closer to One. He could ask for more medicine from her and focus on the special training in the cup world so that he could master inner force as soon as possible. Then he could form the real Eagle Hero couple with her and destroy the Poison Sect, Dark Sect, and other inner force forces that had disgusted him for more than a year, as well as Director Ouyang who had fled abroad. Otherwise, even if he returned to school now, he might not be able to live in peace if he was targeted again. The incident where he was chased by 2 Bone Force martial artists was still vivid in his mind. He learned from his mistakes. In the end, he was still not strong enough. "I'm afraid it will be some time before I return to Beijing. I'll give up on the makeup exams." "How can you do that?" Sun Xiaoxuan said anxiously. Qin Guang smiled. "It's okay. Help me sign up for recultivation. At the end of the semester I'll show you the zodiac sign of another genius. True invincible scholar. Are you afraid?" Sun Xiaoxuan recalled Qin Guang's legendary career of barely managing to pass every single course he took in the past few years. He wanted to ridicule Qin Guang's invincible bookworm setting, but he recalled Qin Guang's unbelievable performance on the plane. Maybe he was not bragging? Maybe he was just not serious in the past? After arriving in Beijing, Sun Xiaoxuan did not continue to hang out with Qin Guang. Instead, he was dragged away by Gaoya. Qin Guang went to the National Art Museum alone. The decoration of the museum had started last week, and Qin Guang Brokerage was in charge of it. He had been away for a few days, not caring about anything. Fortunately, the others in the company were reliable. It did not make much difference whether he was there or not. Anyway, he had to continue doing what he had to do. "Zhanggu, how are the tickets? Are they sold out?" When Qin Guang arrived at the art museum, it was already past 9 p.m. Lu Xiaoyang was still yelling in the venue. When he heard Qin Guang's voice, he immediately turned around. "My boss, thank God. You're finally back. You're too much of a troublemaker." No wonder Lu Xiaoyang was not bothered. He had been working hard on the piano performance, but Qin Fan had gone to America to arm wrestle. When he was done, it was time for him to go back to China to deal with business. Then he had a plane hijacking and a plane crash. If he really didn't come back, then this grand piano performance that was already halfway done would become a complete joke. "What are you doing? Don't panic. Calm down. You are the publicity and public relations manager of Qingguang Agency. Don't embarrass me." Lu Xiaoyang stared at him. To be honest, I still think Qin Fan is more embarrassing. However, he could not say this out loud. There were about a third of the tickets left, but what? "But since this afternoon, I don't know what happened, but the booking phone has been ringing off the hook. The online booking system almost exploded. About 2 hours ago they were all booked." Lu Xiaoyang said very excitedly. Unlike Qin Guang's solo performances in the past, most of them did not charge for tickets. Even if they did, they were very low. There were less than 5,000 seats for this concert. Considering the hasty planning, the National Gallery of Art had spent a lot of money to cut the queue, and to invite a few masters at the last minute, more than 10 million had been invested. The television and online broadcasting rights combined only barely recouped the cost. Considering Qin Guang's terrifying ability to make money in the past, it was really embarrassing for Qingguang Brokerage's team to take on a big task alone, but in the end they did not make any money. Yu Hong and the others discussed and decided to change their strategy. They set the ticket price at a relatively high level. The lowest price was 300 yuan per ticket, and the VIP tickets near the stage were even more expensive. Although Qin Guang had a lot of fans, only a few of them would come from other places to attend the concert. Although the local fans were passionate, many of them were hesitant in front of the high ticket price. But this was not the main reason. Usually, piano performances were elegant arts, and the audience was not wide. Most people who were willing to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to listen to a concert were people who really liked the piano and wanted to achieve a certain level of success in it. There were not many people like that. In addition, the matter came in a hurry. From the time Qin Guang said that he wanted to hold the concert until now, only a week had passed. The publicity cycle was too short, the time was too tight, and the radiation was too limited. Although they were lucky enough to invite 5 world-famous masters, the influence of this matter was still limited to Qin Guang's personal fan group. It was almost the next day, but Qin Guang had not returned. There were still 1/3 of the tickets left. In the morning, Lu Xiaoyang and the others were so anxious that their eyebrows were almost on fire. In the end, in the afternoon, there was suddenly a glimmer of hope, and the tickets were suddenly sold out. Now that Qin Guang had returned, Comrade Xiao Lu was very happy. This was called having 2 blessings. What do you mean you don't know? Third Guzi, although you were a talent when you were a paparazzi, it seems that you still have a lot to learn. You still have to walk the road of marketing slowly. Qin Guang said with a heavy heart as he continued, "Did you guys think that I'm just a boss that doesn't care about anything? No, you're all wrong. I am more concerned about my own matters than anyone else. You don't know how hard I worked to promote this concert." With that, he walked in. Although time was tight, the venue was decorated decently and elegantly. Ah, is that so? Comrade Xiao Lu followed behind Qin Guang with a confused face. He did not know what Qin Guang had done. "President Qin, are you satisfied with this?" Comrade Xiao Lu followed closely beside Qin Guang. Seeing him nodding his head in satisfaction from time to time, he was feeling proud. Qin Guang acknowledged, "It's all right." "It's only all right?" "President Qin, look at this piano again." Seeing Qin Guang's attitude, Comrade Xiao Lu felt hurt. Qin Guang looked up at the black piano, which was much bigger than the one he played before. "The workmanship is quite good, and then? Look at it again. Look at your sister. Don't keep me guessing. This is Master Bobrovsky's posthumous work." "I'm sorry, I don't know any Bobrovsky." Sigh, all right. All right, all right. I know that you are all working hard. Don't compare yourself to me. This is your job. Do the logistics well and then I can take care of all the problems. Don't worry, as long as I am here, Qin Guang brokerage will only get bigger and bigger. Qin Guang did not discourage him. Although he did not know Bobrovsky, since Buttface had specifically mentioned it, perhaps there was something special about this piano. So he simply sat down on it. "Since I have nothing to do, I'll play a few songs to test my hand." Wu Tong walked out of the office exhausted. Ever since she had been promoted to the district bureau chief in Yanjing, her responsibilities had become much heavier than before. When she was a team leader in Wenxing Town, she was only responsible for leading the charge. Now that she had become the bureau chief of a large branch, her regular work was not reduced, but there were more administrative matters. She knew that perhaps Wu Shan was secretly making things difficult for her. He had deliberately arranged things for her so that she would not have the time to pay attention to Qin Guang's matters. But this was Wu Tong's personality. The more you don't want me to do something, the more I want it. As a matter of fact, Qin Guang's piano performance at the National Gallery of Art happened to be in her jurisdiction. Considering the recent anti-terrorism situation in the country, as the bureau chief of the district bureau, she took on the responsibility for the piano performance's security. The world of destruction was too restless. Although the previous cleanup efforts were effective, there were still some fish that slipped through the net. In the past, the world of destruction was always probing China. This time, under Xue Lin's pressure, they seemed to want to fight to the death. Although Wu Tong was a little selfish, she was still worried that the world of destruction would cause trouble at such a large-scale event in Beijing. Tomorrow was the official time to start the piano performance's security work. But after Wu Tong got off work, she decided to investigate the scene on her own. Halfway through the journey, she recalled many things that happened between her and Qin Guang. She subconsciously smiled. This guy was really busy recently. No matter where she went, he seemed to be everywhere. He organized competitions, started a company, and even acted in a movie. In between, he went to Guinness to sharpen pencils. After that, he went to America to arm wrestle. When he returned to China, he turned into a pilot and forced a plane to land. Now he was going to play the piano again. She really didn't know where he got so much energy from. After getting off the car, Wu Tong gradually became distracted on the way from the parking lot to the entrance of the gallery. She could feel that Qin Guang was very restless from how busy he was. With his lazy personality, if he didn't have any ulterior motives, he wouldn't put in so much effort. What did he want? What did he want? Money? He didn't lack money anymore. Status? At his age, he was the bureau chief of the Guangding General Bureau and had a vice-ministerial position. He was the same as her father, Wuxian. So what exactly did he want? Chapter 735. As she was going up the stairs, Wu Tong's phone rang. She picked it up and saw that it was a deputy director of the Yanjing Municipal Bureau. This deputy director was the team leader of the Shattered World Task Force, and Wu Tong was the deputy team leader. She was quite puzzled. Didn't they have a meeting less than half an hour ago? Why was he calling again? Little Wu, the investigation report for DL 199333 came out yesterday. Didn't there just be a press conference in the afternoon? Also, this is not under our jurisdiction, right? You don't say. This really has something to do with our task force. I'm already preparing to set off for Jiaodong City. According to the analysis of the accident investigation team, the two hijackers have a close relationship with the Shattered World. I also just received a notice for our Yanjing task force to assist in the investigation. After all, our task force has the most contact with the Shattered World people in the country. There's such a thing? Wu Tong was shocked. She also knew about the hijacking. Right, there's also a very special piece of information. It said that during the hijacking, the criminals directly called out Qin Guang's name. It's clear that they know Qin Guang. This matter may be related to the terrorist attack that Qin Guang handled in Detroit. Wu Tong's heart itched. Since this matter was related to Qin Guang, she also wanted to go to Jiaodong City. But after thinking about it, she felt that it was more important to stay in Yanjing to be responsible for the security of the piano performance. I've already asked Little Qin to send a more detailed file to your email. Take a look yourself. I have a feeling that your security work tomorrow must not be taken lightly. With that, the deputy director hung up. Wu Tong was not in a hurry to enter the National Gallery of Art. Instead, she sat on the stairs and read the information. The accident report regarding flight safety could indeed be made public, but the identity of the hijackers could not be made public. As for the passengers on the plane, although they also heard the criminals call out Qin Guang's name, Qin Guang was a celebrity. They could not think of such a deep reason. According to the information provided by the investigation team, there was indeed an organization behind the terrorist attack that Qin Guang had previously solved at the University of Detroit. The two criminals involved in the hijacking also belonged to this organization. Even though this organization wasn't the Shattered World, they had a close relationship with the Shattered World. Almost every year they would send people to the Shattered World for military training. Wu Tong's brows furrowed even tighter. From the looks of it, Qin Guang had already entered their sights. If they were from the World Destroyer, they would undoubtedly view Qin Guang as a thorn in their side when Xuelin didn't stop and failed to kidnap Qin Guang in the United States. Not to mention that Qin Guang even ruined their plans by coincidence. The Special Task Force leader's words did make some sense. They really couldn't let their guard down tomorrow. When Wu Tong walked into the art gallery, Qin Guang was about to play the second piece. The gallery was brightly lit, and the workers were still busy banging loudly. She hadn't seen him for a long time. When she saw him again, he seemed different from normal people. He sat in front of the piano in his casual clothes. The light that had just been set up shone from the ceiling on his back, giving him a different kind of glow. How did this kid become so handsome again? Am I hallucinating? With just a glance, Wu Tong felt like her breath was being captured by him. This little brother of hers was slowly becoming a star in the sky, and she was still on the ground. He was slowly becoming unreachable and unreachable. She knew it might be an illusion. Whether it was him sitting on the stage or joking in front of her, he was still the same person. However, she couldn't get rid of the mysterious feeling in her heart. Wu Tong subconsciously picked up her phone and pointed the camera at Qin Guang. The moment she pressed the record button, Qin Guang's fingers started to move. Wu Tong didn't know much about music, but she was addicted to the music without any resistance. She had only seen him play the piano in his videos or in the concert videos of his left and right hand. She didn't expect that this guy could be so handsome when he played the piano live. In the spacious and splendid hall, the melodious variations on canon started slowly and echoed in every inch of the space. Qin Guang looked leisurely. His fingers danced on the keys agilely. The sound of the workers didn't disturb him at all. Instead, it seemed to be completely integrated into his music and became his accompaniment. Wu Tong held up her phone, recording as she slowly walked forward. When she finally stopped under the stage, Qin Guang had just finished playing the song. Lu Xiaoyang, who was standing beside Qin Guang, applauded warmly. President Qin, I really regret that I didn't record it. How did you do it just now? Even the sound of the workers' renovation was integrated into your music. Qin Guang stood up and clapped his hands. He said meaningfully, "Buttface, you don't understand. This is the charm of music." In fact, Qin Guang was quite regretful. What charm of music? It was just a coincidence. However, such a wonderful coincidence couldn't happen again. Forget it, I didn't record it. Hey, Sister Wu Tong, why are you here? At this moment, Qin Guang noticed Wu Tong and came over with a chuckle. Wu Tong was still holding up her phone. Hey, why don't you give us a thank you after playing? I'm recording it. Did you record everything I played just now? Yes. That's good. Send it to me. I'll send it to my company and ask them to sort it out. Then I'll post it on the internet. Just take it as a leaked rehearsal video. Although the tickets had been sold out, the audience rating was still not guaranteed. It would be good to have more publicity. Qin Guang said again, by the way, what are you doing here at this time? Are you not busy with work now? Of course I am. Aren't I working overtime? Overtime? That's right, investigating the scene. I'll be in charge of security for your concert. How about it? Are you touched? Is there a need for you to come? You don't like me, do you? No. I just feel that it's a waste of public resources. Wu Tong shook her head and pulled Qin Guang to the side. After thinking about it, she decided to tell Qin Guang about the potential risks. After listening to Wu Tong, Qin Guang's brows furrowed like a knot. He was also annoyed by the lingering spirits of the world breaker. This feeling of being in the light while the other party was in the dark was terrible. Don't worry. The situation has been special recently. It's not just ordinary police officers who are participating in the security work. I've also sent people from the Guangdong Police Headquarters. Aren't you the chief of the Guangdong Police Headquarters? I'm doing this for your sake. Anyway, there are quite a few mutants from your unit. It's to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Recently, we've arrested and killed at least 20 to 30 world breaker assassins. They're not that big of a threat in the country. Wu Tong comforted Qin Guang at this time. It was impossible to cancel the event just because of some unstable factors. If that was really the case, he wouldn't be able to live in peace. Chapter 736. China had never been a disaster area for terrorist attacks. On one hand, it was different from other countries. China had the largest and most resolute army in the world. On the other hand, it was also because of China's relatively strong attitude. China's soldiers were iron-blooded and would never compromise. It was also because of China's style of doing things that most terrorist organizations would stay away from this country. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would want to go against this unyielding regime. They had spent so much effort to get hold of a certain weakness of China and wanted to negotiate with them. In the end, the other party said, "Go ahead and bomb as much as you want. We're not afraid of bombing. At most, we'll slowly deal with the aftermath. But you guys better be prepared to face our crazy revenge." Because of this, China was different from other countries. Large-scale terrorist attacks rarely happened in China. Extremist organizations were also people, and they had to weigh the pros and cons. Not many people were willing to pay a heavy price for nothing. If it wasn't for Shui Lin, the broken world wouldn't have taken such a risk. Alright, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. I only wanted to come and take a look. Why don't we have supper together? It's been a while. Qin Guang chuckled as he forwarded Wu Tong's video to Lu Xiaoyang. His eyes were sparkling as he chuckled. Looking around, Wu Tong noticed that there was no one else aside from the two of them. With a charming smile, she moved her head over and pressed her chest against Qin Guang's chest. You naughty brother, are you feeling restless after escaping from death? Supper? I'm afraid you want to eat me. Having his thoughts exposed, Qin Guang shook his head and replied, No, definitely not. I'd be a fool if I believed you, but I really can't do it today. I still have to go and negotiate with the other 2 district police stations to transfer more police forces here. You don't want to play the piano and cause the crowd to explode, right? Wu Tong's face turned red as she spoke. She thought that she could maintain her composure after not seeing him for a long time. But now that she saw him and there was no one else around, she couldn't help but feel restless. The two of them were so close to each other that even the slightest movement would cause the tearing sensation to spread to the sensitive part of her chest, causing her face to flush red and her breathing to accelerate. She didn't know why, but as soon as she saw him, her mind would involuntarily come up with many charming thoughts, completely out of control. She remembered how energetic she was in the meeting just now, and then she thought about her current state. She didn't look like a bureau chief at all. She looked like a resentful woman who finally got a good rain after a long drought. Why am I like this? She wondered if there was poison in Qin Guang's body. When she got close to him, smelled his scent, and listened to his voice, some kind of extra hormone in her cerebral cortex was secreted uncontrollably, making her whole head feel numb. She used to be able to restrain herself a little, but after spending that night with him in the hospital, that little bit of restraint disappeared. She just wanted to be more presumptuous, as if only by doing so could she feel her own existence. It was as if the other meaning of her life, besides serving justice as a police officer, was to seduce him. But now she didn't know why, she felt that she was getting farther and farther away from him. It was as if he was about to become a star in the sky, hanging high in the bright night sky, visible but untouchable. Sometimes Wu Tong also felt afraid. She was really afraid that one day she would suddenly disappear from his life and become no longer important. Okay, you go. Qin Guang was a little depressed. He didn't want to admit it. Even if he acted like he was the most important person in the world and could take on anything in front of others, when he really slipped from the cushion to the ground, he really felt some joy and fear of escaping from death. Unfortunately, in front of others he was a great hero. It was okay to act cute, but in the end he couldn't let others see the weak and afraid side of his heart. He said that he was afraid of death, but it was not modest. Who wasn't afraid of death? Didn't he fight so hard because he didn't want to die? Now that he saw Wu Tong in private, his heart was a little relaxed. If it was possible, he really wanted to chat with Wu Tong more. He wanted to ask her if it was tiring to be the district bureau chief recently. He wanted to ask her what happened with Broken World and those people in Yenjing. He also wanted to talk to her about what was going through his mind when he was chased by two bone-strength martial artists. He wanted to talk to her about how proud he was when he stood at the peak of the Dota world, how arrogant he was when he won the Guinness pencil sharpening contest, and how cute he was when he was arm wrestling with those burly men in Detroit. He wanted to talk about how he was first looked down upon and then shocked by those idiots. There were so many things he wanted to talk to her about, so many things he wanted to say. But now she had to leave again before he could say more than a few words. It was impossible to say that he didn't regret it. Look at how wrong you are. Okay, I'll give you 15 minutes. Wu Tong's face was red. Her body gradually pressed forward, getting closer and closer. Her mind gradually became muddled. She really wanted to do one thing. She wanted to make Qin Guang, who was about to fly to the sky, more vulgar. She wanted him to fall back to the ground and make him feel more real. 15 minutes? Right here. What if you're seen naked? Qin Guang panicked as he looked around. He's in the backstage of the gallery and there might be someone walking over at any moment. Isn't this a little too exciting? He was thick-skinned, but what if Wu Tong walked out naked? That would be a great loss. You wish. I'm not that stupid. Wu Tong said as she moved closer. Her hand slowly reached out, passing through Qin Guang's belt. She went straight to the place where she had looked closely and wiped for him personally. She closed her fingers and held it gently. She clamped her legs together. She recalled the time when she was in the special training camp at Shund. She turned her phone on vibrate and kept calling this guy. Her eyes gradually became confused. Time seemed to have turned back to a long time ago. At that time she was lying in the ward with Qin Guang. Then he went berserk. At that time she was very ignorant and thought that he had kidney deficiency and his vitality was unstable. Later, she heard from the shadow woman that there was nothing wrong with him in that aspect. Regarding this problem, she seemed to have never been able to confirm it. I really haven't touched him for a long time. I'll give it a try today. She said that she would only give him 15 minutes. Half an hour later, Wu Tong finally stuffed a pack of tissues into Qin Guang's hands. Clean up yourself. I'm leaving. Her hands were wet and sticky, but Wu Tong didn't feel disgusted. Very good. This guy is still immortal. He hasn't become an immortal. Qin Guang leaned against the wall. His face was full of satisfaction. Looking at Wu Tong's back as she hurried away, he shivered all over. Sister Wu Tong is still so charming. No, compared to the past with the promotion of her position, she had an indescribable aura of a superior, although she didn't realize it herself. The more it was like this, the more special it felt when something happened between them. Wu Tong sat alone in the car. It took her a whole 5 minutes to calm down. It was really dangerous just now. She was teased by Qin Guang to the point that she almost wanted to take off her clothes on the spot. Fortunately, this guy gave up his weapon at the critical moment. Otherwise, it would have been hard to escape. Chapter 737. What? You two slept in the same room last night? And you let him go just like that? Gaoya sat up on the bed in a high-class neighborhood far away from Beijing's 4th Ring Road. She looked at Sun Xiaoxuan angrily. Sun Xiaoxuan blushed. What else can I do? He's so tired. Do you want me to torture him? Gaoya poked Sun Xiaoxuan's head. Are you stupid? Let me tell you, men are never tired when it comes to that kind of thing, especially Qingguang's age. Even if he just ran 10,000 meters, he'll burn you to ashes if you light a fire. Do you believe me? Sun Xiaoxuan didn't believe her. Ha! You're so stupid. So stupid. You'll die of stupidity sooner or later. Qingguang isn't that kind of person. Xiaoxuan, do you know what's the stupidest thing about you? What? The stupidest thing about you is that you think you understand men. Or rather, you think you understand Qingguang. Don't I understand him? No, what you understand is only the perfect version of him that you have created in your heart. It's not the real him. Believe me, if you don't give it your all, you'll slowly lose him. Even if he becomes more and more important in your heart, you'll become less and less important in his heart. Sun Xiaoxuan fell silent. She couldn't compete with Gaoya. All along, Gaoya had handled things more maturely and magnanimously than her. Now that Gaoya and Lin Jingwei were close, Sun Xiaoxuan was envious of them. Qingguang isn't as strong and perfect as you make him out to be. I saw the press conference. He's really afraid of death, but he's just putting up a front in front of you. He's actually afraid too. You missed your chance. Really. You're too close to the situation. You're crazy. Gaoya sighed again. If you don't believe me, I'll ask Lin to test him tomorrow. Aren't we going to the Great Wall tomorrow? Why are you still going? Your man is going to play the piano. Aren't you going to support him? Let me tell you another piece of good news. During this time, your love rival is still abroad and can't come back. My love rival? Who is it? Jin Shirui and Jiang Yage. Jin Shirui alone is enough. Why did Jiang Yage get involved as well? Sun Xiaoxuan still didn't know about this. It was Lin Jingwei, the blabbermouth, who sold this information to Gaoya. Gaoya smiled evilly. What a sad person. How many people are eyeing your man now? You can't even count them with your fingers. Okay. Gaoya, thank you. Sun Xiaoxuan lowered his head. Gaoya looked at her desolate expression and sighed. Sai Xiaosun, if it were up to me, I would advise you to just let it go. You're also very outstanding, but he doesn't suit you and you don't suit him either. Trust me, I won't be wrong. Then why didn't you persuade me? Because most of the time, people who aren't suitable for each other will definitely end up together, and people who aren't suitable for each other might end up together in happiness. Plus, I can't persuade you, can I? Sun Xiaoxuan hugged her knees and stared blankly at the evening news on the TV. It was about the plane crash again. After careful editing, Qingguang looked serious and decent again. The elders had put in a lot of effort to help Qingguang portray a positive image. How could he be saved like this? The next morning, Lu Xiaoyang and the other middle-level managers of Qingguang Entertainment wanted Qingguang to rehearse at the art gallery. However, their request was rejected by Qingguang. He didn't think he needed to rehearse at his level. Even if he played with his eyes closed, it wouldn't make a difference. Yangshi came just in time. He was under Big Beard Deng's orders. Obviously, Yangshi had become a sticky candy for Big Beard Deng in the days before the movie officially started shooting. He would stick to Qingguang all the time. Didn't you tell Uncle Big Beard about my acting skills? I did, but Director Deng thought I was bragging. Qingguang sat in the driver's seat. Yangshi sat in the passenger's seat, while Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang sat in the back. About half an hour ago, Qingguang and Xin Yuliang had contacted each other. They planned to take advantage of this time to settle all the endorsement contracts and commercials that needed to be shot. More than a dozen companies had spent 150 million yuan on him, but he didn't even get a single photo. He felt really bad. If someone else encountered such a spokesperson, they would have long exploded. Fortunately, these second and third generation bosses had heard about Qingguang's recent situation from their seniors, which shocked them to the core. What happened to Jin Shiyue's boyfriend? What happened to cozy up to her? How did you become a real cozy up to her without saying a word? What about us second and third generation bosses? Look at your speed of promotion. You are the destined one, right? Also, we all know how the Tangjie Foundation got the money to set up your company. Not only did you get promoted, but you also got rich. That's too much. Therefore, no matter how much money Qingguang took the money and did not do anything, these people could only grit their teeth and make preparations first. When Master Guang was free, they would drag him over and get rid of him. Among these people, the most bitter one was probably Xin Yuliang and his online ride-hailing company. Chen Guang's personal situation was the most compatible with his online ride-hailing company. He even specially prepared a set of publicity and packaging plans for this. Recently, ever since Xin Yuliang's company merged with another foreign tycoon's branch in China, the era of online ride-hailing in China officially came to an end. At the same time, because of the implementation of the new policies, the price of online ride-hailing in China increased by more than 30%. In a short period of time, there was a big rebound in China. Whether it was the number of part-time drivers or the volume of orders from consumers, there was an obvious decline. Even the company's share price fell, and its market value dropped by tens of billions. Xin Yuliang was burning with anxiety. He wanted to ride on Chen Guang's recent popularity and come up with a good advertising plan. He wanted to increase the popularity of the online ride-hailing platform and stabilize the company's share price. He had already set up the advertising team and was just waiting for Master Guang's arrival. The dozen companies had signed the endorsement contract at the same time, and one of the companies happened to be in the business of shooting commercials, so the dozen companies simply tied this matter to this guy. The scripts of the various companies had already been written. On Chen Guang's side, Chen Guang's agency had already reviewed all the scripts according to the tone set by Chen Guang. They were in line with his personal position, so they could directly start filming. Well, actually, he did not have a position at all. As long as the films were normal, there was no problem. Everything was ready except for the male lead. Once they heard that Chen Guang had time, Xin Yuliang and the advertising planning company only used less than 20 minutes to select the person. At the same time, they also temporarily set up the filming studio. Other people would often fly around the world to meet the company's needs when filming advertisements. However, Chen Guang's advertisement was different. As early as when they signed the contract, Chen Guang's attitude was very clear. You can shoot the film and I will cooperate fully, but don't drag me around. If you can settle it in the same place at once, don't drag it out twice. Therefore, although the script was extravagant, the actual filming would still be done in the filming studio. As for the other things, they would be added to the green screen in post-production. It was none of their business. Fortunately, the media industry was becoming more and more developed, and the division of labor in various aspects was becoming clearer. With appropriate planning, this was completely achievable. Mr. Shin, we don't have to drag everyone here, right? If we can't finish it today, we can continue tomorrow. The director in charge of filming was also an expert in the industry. He had a lot of experience. More than a dozen scripts were all produced by him. The length ranged from 2 minutes to 30 seconds. Perhaps not all of them were classics, but they were all in line with the positioning of each company. Apart from Xin Yuliang, who had already arrived in person, the relevant people in charge of the other companies were also in the process of rushing over one after another. Xin Yuliang patted this old man on the shoulder. I didn't want to either, but Brother Chen Guang said that the length of more than a dozen films added up to less than half an hour. He is tight on time, so he will finish all of them in one go today. The director rolled his eyes. Looking at the 20 or so contracted models waiting at the side, he felt very upset. He heard that there were 3 other companies sending their other spokespeople here. Really, this Chen Guang said he wouldn't come and he wouldn't come. Once he came, he had to gather everyone. Why are you so ostentatious? What are you thinking? Did you really think that a 30-second advertisement would only take 30 seconds? Let's not talk about the makeup and costumes. Don't treat a bean bun like dry vegetables. Filming an advertisement also requires acting skills, okay? Every expression and movement must be on point, okay? Acting in an advertisement is also an art, okay? If there is a slight mistake, it will be NG and we will have to start over, okay? Otherwise, the audience will be embarrassed and the advertisement will not achieve the desired effect. Wouldn't that be fooling the audience? To prevent the content from being repeated, other than Chen Guang, the other characters in the advertisement will be different. That's why this company called all their models over. When it was time for the actual filming, each company might have more specific requirements. So, under Xin Yuliang's insistence, the director had to ask his assistant to contact the relevant publicity department of each company. Obviously, Mr. Chen wanted to shoot all 12 commercials for the 12 companies in one day. Alright. He had to leave by 6 p.m. at the latest because he had a concert at 8 p.m. That meant he only had half of the day to shoot. Oh my god, what the hell? I've been in commercials my whole life and I've never seen anything so ridiculous, okay? When other celebrities get a $10 million endorsement deal, the sponsors will not dare to go west. If the sponsors say that the advertisement is not good and want to reshoot it, They can even go to Northern Europe to reshoot for 7 to 8 days. You, on the other hand, have 12 contracts with a total value of 150 million, and you want to finish all of them in one day? Why are you so arrogant? As a big shot in the advertising industry, this guy had changed his outlook on life. I want to see how you are going to shoot 12 advertisements in one day. You want to fool me? No way. You are shameless, but I still want to be shameless. If I shoot a bunch of rubbish with my name on it, how am I going to survive in the industry? Won't my reputation be ruined? No matter what, I must be strict and have high standards. Just wait and see how hundreds of people will fool around with you for the whole day. If you can't act well and the scenes change too fast, and it will be all green screen post-production, the models who are acting with you will all be eliminated. Not one of them will pass. Chapter 738. Chu Ming gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He had made up his mind. No matter how Mr. Shin tried to plead for Qin Guang, he had to be perfect. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes. If you have any objections, I'll just get someone else to do it. I won't be able to handle such a difficult male lead anyway. I, Chu Ming, have been directing commercials for more than 20 years. I have my own professionalism. Even if you guys are willing to make do with it, I'm sorry, but I, Chu Ming, live by 3 words. Never make do with it. Old Chu, don't pull a long face. You don't know how hard it was for us to invite Qin Guang. I know you're under a lot of pressure, so please bear with it. It wasn't the first time Xin Yuliang and Chu Ming had worked together. One look at Chu Ming's face and he knew that he was angry. Actually, Xin Yuliang didn't say it out loud. Even he felt that Qin Guang was too much and knew how to put on airs. Because of you and brother Bai Hua, as well as the importance the elders have placed on you, we want to improve our relationship with you. That's why we're rushing to give you money. That being said, we're willing to give you money. We also know that you're a busy man. You can't be like other celebrities who don't care about endorsement contracts. So, if you don't want to move around and follow the director's orders, we'll accept it. To make it easier for you, we've even gathered all 12 companies to shoot in one company. But you want to shoot 12 commercials in one day? To be honest, brother Qin Guang, you're a little hurtful. Xin Yuliang thought that, but he didn't show any dissatisfaction on his face. He even comforted Chu Ming. Chu Ming sighed. President Shen, I'm not trying to nitpick. I've seen people shoot 3 commercials in one day, but they're all great actors. They're famous in the industry for being able to move quickly and work well with each other. But as for Qin Guang, I admit that he's great in other aspects, and I also admit that he's very popular in the country recently. But what did he do in the past have anything to do with filming? Xin Yuliang wanted to say something but stopped. Chu Ming interrupted him again. Don't use his scenes in Tears for a Country to comfort me. I know what happened. Back then when they filmed that scene, Big Beard Deng almost fainted from anger. Why do you think he can take 12 pictures a day? He's slapping the faces of all the bosses. How could he be so arrogant? President Shin, what kind of background does he have? Is it worth it? Xin Yuliang sighed. What kind of background could Qin Guang have? He really couldn't say anything about this matter. If he did, he was afraid of scaring people to death. Old Chu, please bear with him. Anyway, don't ask too much of him later. Let's try our best to finish filming today. Impossible. CO Shin, you know me very well. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. The films that I, Old Chu, produce have never been bad. Hi. Why are you so stubborn? I have my own principles too. You let me take this job because you think highly of my ability. I can't fool you. It's no big deal, it's no big deal, you can just replace him. Hey, Old Chu, why are you being so stubborn? I'm not being stubborn. I'm just stating the facts. After waiting for a while, people from the other 11 companies came one after another. Xin Yuliang was the only one who was at the level of Xin Yuliang. The other companies at most only sent the manager of the publicity department or the manager of the marketing department. Although no one said anything, they didn't seem to be very happy. Xin Yuliang still wanted to comfort Chu Ming, but it was useless. While the two of them were arguing, Qin Guang, accompanied by Yang Shi Yuhong and Lu Xiaoyang, came from the entrance of the advertising agency. So this is Qin Guang? He looks so young. Honestly, he's more handsome in real life than on TV. Little lass, are you yearning for love? Screw you. You'd better save your breath. Look at the people around him. They don't like small models like us. Maybe because his bald head was too dazzling, Qin Guang was recognized from afar. Of course he didn't think so. The old man walked with a dignified manner. When he walked, the aura of the 955 elements would dissipate naturally. Of course he was quite different from the others. Xiao Qin, don't you think we are too arrogant? Lu Xiaoyang saw many familiar faces that he had seen before when he signed the contract. He felt a little guilty. Qin Guang pretended to be ignorant. How are we arrogant? How about we shoot 2 or 3 films today? Can we continue tomorrow? Lu Xiaoyang finally said what was on his mind. Qin Guang said with a smile, "Buttface, I've told you not to try to figure out me, your boss, with the mentality of an ordinary person. Otherwise you won't be able to keep up with me sooner or later. Don't you think so, brother Yang?" Yang Shi rolled his eyes. To be honest, he used to be a TV commercial director. He knew Qin Guang's acting skills were excellent. However, he really didn't think Qin Guang would succeed today. He also felt that Qin Guang was being a little too careless. Even if you're good at acting, how can you guarantee that the person you're acting with will be fine? Brother Qin Guang, you're finally here. Do you want to take a break? Then you can shoot my first one? Xin Yuliang walked over with Chu Ming beside him. Qin Guang waved his hand carelessly. It doesn't matter. Let's just shoot. There are so many people here. How can we waste our time? You also know that it's a waste of time to call everyone here? Mr. Qin, you're really extravagant, Chu Ming said sarcastically. Turning around, Qin Guang looked at Chu Ming. This old man looked to be in his 50s with a grizzled beard. He wore a pair of brown spectacles, and his goatee was tied into a whip. He looked somewhat artistic, and he should be the director of this advertisement. However, the words that came out of his mouth weren't pleasant to the ears. Ignorance is bliss. He must have thought that I'm going to mess things up today. That's why he's not happy with me. What a pitiful guy. He's trying to figure out the old man's acting skills with the mentality of an ordinary person. Xin Yuliang felt a headache coming on. If it weren't for the fact that Chu Ming had written all the scripts, he would have kicked this stupid director away. You're the only one who's not happy? You think you're the only one who's not happy? I'm the one who's not happy. Can't you see that I'm holding it in? Do you think it's easy for us to maintain our relationship? It's hard to provide help in times of need, but it's easy to add flowers to brocade. Qin Guang didn't lack money right now, and if he angered the other party, what could he do if the other party decided to break the contract? Sue the director of the Guangdong General Bureau for breaking the contract? No way. Other companies can just change their spokesperson, but I'm in big trouble. Where am I going to find such a suitable spokesperson? Xin Yuliang was holding the thousands of taxi booking forms that Qin Guang had made in the past. He was just waiting for the TV commercial to be shot. Then the company's resources would be focused on him. That way he'd be able to get the company's image back on track. The more crucial it was, the more afraid he was of something going to go wrong. Brother Qin Guang, old Chu didn't mean it that way. To his surprise, Chu Ming waved his hand. Mr. Shen, don't give me a way out. That's exactly what I meant. Mr. Qin, I know you're famous now. I'm just a small director. I don't have much influence. I think you might have a misunderstanding about TV commercials. You think it's as simple as holding the product and posing according to the script. No. I have to tell you it's not that simple. I don't know what makes you think you can finish all 12 in a day, but I can tell you clearly that if you don't meet my requirements, you won't get a single one today. Xin Yuliang pinched his forehead. I can't take it anymore. My heart, liver, stomach, and kidneys are all hurting. At the same time, Qin Guang was furious. Isn't this Chu Ming a little too full of himself? Fine, if you're really that capable, then let's get someone else. I've been slapping your face too many times recently and you're trying to act cool. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know why flowers bloom. Mr. Chu, don't be like this. Qin Guang's acting is very good. Yang Shi spoke up at this time. He also felt the tension in the air, so he quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. Yang Shi, why are you here? Chu Ming clearly knew who Yang Shi was. Yang Shi looked at Qin Guang apologetically. His eyes were saying, "Big bro, please give me some face and don't get mad." Looking at Su Tao's pleading appearance, Qin Guang's heart softened. Consider yourself lucky that someone is pleading for you. Otherwise, Qin Guang would really have followed your wishes and sent you packing. Yang Shi saw that Qin Guang had finally calmed down, so he said, "Isn't Qin Guang going to act in Women? Director Deng asked me to follow Brother Qin and explain the script to him." Chu Ming snorted. "Come on, I've seen director's assistants guiding scenes, but I've never seen anyone like you following around 24/7. You even came to my place. Don't try to fool me. Mr. Chen's acting is really good. Do you think Mr. Deng would let you guide him?" This time it was Yang Shi's turn to have a headache. He quickly turned to Qin Guang and blinked. He pretended to introduce, "Brother Qin Guang, when I was in school Mr. Chu taught me a few photography courses. He's very famous in school and he's very good at making commercials. A good commercial will help you build up your image. Seeing that Chu Ming was on the verge of tears, Qin Guang understood Yang Shi's intentions. It seemed that Yang Shi really respected this old fella. Forget it, I owe you a favor since you helped me when I was still a burden in Wujing Film City, so I'll give you some face. Alright brother Yang, you don't have to say any more. I understand. Director Chu, I know why you have such a big problem with me, but I have to make this clear. I'm not trying to act like a big shot today. Let's cut the bullsh *T and shoot the scene the way we're supposed to shoot. Let's just read the script and see how it goes, alright? Alright, let's go get our makeup done. Shen Yuliang was afraid that the two of them would quarrel if they continued talking, so he immediately came over and dragged Qin Guang away. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.